I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting, and to be sure that everybody can hear me, I take off my mask when I speak, and probably most of the other people will too. Thank you for coming out on this cold night. I hear we might get a little dusting of snow, but I don't think it will be a snow day. Nope, it's a Wednesday anyway. So, yeah, it's Wednesday tomorrow. Today's Tuesday, right? Got the days right. That's important. Anyway, thank you so much for coming out. We appreciate it. We like it when people participate and are part of the community and come to the meetings to be informed. Also, I'll go ahead and wish you happy holidays in advance. We only have a few more days before Christmas break starts. And I encourage you over the break to please be safe and stay healthy and come back in January ready to roll again. Okay, so we'll start with introductions.
Randy Gilman, Assistant Superintendent, Elementary.
Tammy Cardona, Assistant Superintendent, Secondary.
Jim Shalhoub, Director.
Crystal Hargis, Director.
Bob Grunwald, Director.
Judy Cherney, New Board Secretary.
John Stewart, Chief Financial Officer.
Declan Fitzpatrick, Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Kelly Brock, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources.
Carol Yant, Member.
Michelle Chamberlain, Director.
Judy Smith, Vice President to the Board.
Nisha Patel, Superintendent.
And I'm Vicki Hansen, Board President. The first item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes from November 17th and December 7th. Can I get a motion, please?
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Approved. The next item on the agenda is approving the agenda for tonight.
I make a motion to approve the agenda. I second it.
All in favor?
Yes.
Motion passed. The next item, 3.1, is patron comments. Dr. Gilman.
Yes, we have several comments this evening. Mrs. Hanson, were you going to go first with yours?
Yes, Dr. Patel asked that I read this email that was sent to the Board of Education. It's from Angie Barbarotta, from President of the NEA. Good evening. I am sending you the statement that Fox NEA had planned to read at the board meeting. I will not be able to attend due to being quarantined for contact with a student who has tested positive. I am also not asking any of my members of the executive team to go to the meeting to ensure their health and safety. I would like to state that I, Angela Barbarotta, have never questioned Dr. Patel's leadership within the district and feel that others have made it seem that way through comments stated publicly and on social media. I also feel that myself and members of the team have gone above and beyond to work alongside Dr. Patel and administration in a respectful manner. We are writing in regard to the recent petition that we sent out to the bargaining unit regarding the district's reentry plan. First, we would like, again, to clarify that the petition was in no way a critique of Dr. Patel's performance or meant to indicate a loss of confidence in her leadership. The petition was simply asking that we follow the original phase-in plan that was set forth by Dr. Patel in the fall. We have heard from many of our members asking that we stay the course with bringing more kids back until we were out of the red zone of transmission. Members started emailing last week saying that they had heard rumors and rumblings that we were going back at semester with all the kids 4 days a week at all levels. The petition was meant to represent their interest as members of the NEA and represent the rest of the bargaining members who are unaffiliated or in another teacher's organization. They had 125 signatures at the time. We are sure that you're aware that our message was lost in translation by many. There were volatile social media posts written by staff members indicating that the NEA, indicting the NEA for not wanting to bring kids back to in-person learning. Nothing could be further from the truth. We want all our students back when it is safe to do so. The post online devolved into an ugly bashing of teachers who were scared of the virus, and the rhetoric turned threatening on several different posts. For these reasons, we are not comfortable at this time sharing the names of the staff who signed the petition. Their safety is foremost in our minds, and we do not wish to further subject any staff member who is uncomfortable with in-person learning during a worldwide pandemic to further ridicule. We hope that the board members and Dr. Patel understand that our intent was not to stir up trouble or divide. Our only intent was to represent the teachers who felt that their voices were getting drowned out by a larger or louder contingency of teachers who did not necessarily believe the virus is a threat to them or their students, respectively the NEA team. And I'd like to, if I may, typically what happens when a community member or a teacher or anyone sends an email to the board and Dr. Patel, I respond on behalf of the board to that person and copy it to Dr. Patel and the rest of the board. So to be clear, I'd like to read you my response. Thank you for clarifying the petition and why it was sent. It is my sincere hope that all of the teaching staff can respect and value each other even when there is disagreement regarding what action should be taken. I especially appreciate the fact that none of your actions were meant to question Dr. Patel's leadership or to disrespect her in any way. The teaching staff, and I'm going to add all of the staff at Fox C-6 School District, are dedicated and consistently put forth their very best effort on behalf of the students. On behalf of the board, I want to thank you and all of the staff at Fox for your service and dedication. And now, Mr. Gilman, if you want to call up the remaining public comments.
Sure. Our first comment is by Kathy O'Connor. While she makes her way up, I want to remind our speakers this evening that problems involving particular or identifiable employees or students are reserved for executive session. Only items from the posted agenda may be discussed. A 3-minute time period will be allowed per speaker. A warning will be given after 2.5 minutes. The Vice President of the Board will be the timekeeper.
Good evening. My name is Kathy O'Connor, the Fox C6 CTA President and a special education teacher at Merrimack Heights Elementary. Tonight I would like to discuss the positive impacts of staying on a hybrid learning platform. According to my colleagues who teach on a secondary level, if staying home from school would stop the spread of the virus, we would support it wholeheartedly. But our high school students are not staying home. They're working more hours than ever at part-time jobs. These in the classroom, full virtual learning isn't working and isn't sustainable on any level for long periods of time. The number of students with D's and F's are at an all-time high, with many virtual-only students are not engaging in any meaningful way with teachers. Additionally, many hybrid students are not engaging with academic materials on their virtual days. Our hope is that when Jefferson County moves to the orange level, that it would be best for our students and our community to move to a 4-day schedule. If curriculum is supposed to be constantly evaluated and updated to best serve our students, shouldn't the re-entry plan also be flexible? Provides for them. Our students are struggling to stay engaged, most citing depression and anxiety, which has been the trend nationally. According to the Child Mind Institute, there's been an increase of parents seeking outside support of services, with 40% of parents indicating their child is experiencing anxiety and 37% of parents indicating their child is experiencing depression. Part of our jobs as educators is to teach students how to handle a variety of social situations to be prepared and successful in the world ahead of them. When we allow students to hide in their homes and behind the blank screens, they will never be equipped to handle these social situations, making it harder for our students to be successful. When it comes to our special education students on all levels, being present in school is vital to their individual education plans. When our students are not present in school, some goals are unattainable through a virtual setting. It is often difficult and sometimes impossible to take data on these goals. It is difficult to meet the special education minutes aligned within each IEP through a virtual setting, thus setting up students for a higher rate of regression. Teachers across the district want to be in school. This is what we went to school for. This is our passion. This is our dream. There is no survey or petition that will show our teachers want to just sit at home. John Gordon once stated, "Being positive doesn't mean you ignore the reality or sugarcoat what's happening. It means you don't let the negativity sour things and make them worse. We trust the leadership of Dr. Patel to guide us through the uncharted waters still ahead of us. Continue to let her do her job and let the teachers, students, and staff stay in school.
Next, we have Adia Colas.
Hello, my name is Adia Colas, and I'm a 5th grade student at Antonia Elementary. I wanted to say something tonight because even though I'm a student, I think the best thing I can do for my school right now is to stand up for my education. It's been really hard for me, and I'm sure many other students, to be partly working from home so far all year. Home, what was once my safe place, where I could take a vacation from all the stress from school, is now that place of discomfort and anxiety. Also, being at home, I know I've been getting lower grades than I ever have before. I believe for me and my fellow students, we should be fully taught our information at school with the interaction of others. I think all students should be given a chance to do their best. Through all my years as a student, it was only last year that I realized how important being in school was. It's for helping you to socialize, get to know, and spend time to learn the opinions of other students. We need to be able to look at one another in person and get the best teaching experience we can. We need this for our parents, teachers, our future years, and hearts. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me this evening.
Next up, we have Jessica Forrest and Kim Bowles.
Hi, I'm Kim Bowles. I've been teaching in the district for 28 years, and I'm an NEA building rep.
And I'm Jessica Forst, and I've been teaching for 19 years in the district, and I'm an MSTA building rep. I'm also the parent of 3 children in the district, 1 in each level, elementary, middle, and high school.
We are here tonight as a united front to show our teacher organizations, our school board, and our community that we fully support returning to school for 4 days a week. We have had almost 1 full semester of hybrid learning for our students and who chose the flexible learning plan. Since then, we've seen students return to school wearing masks, sitting far apart, and have not had a great deal of COVID transmissions traced back to school. Our building has had 0 transmissions traced back to school. However, we have had students struggling, feeling isolated and withdrawn. Parents are overwhelmed, trying to do the best they can, and teachers are feeling as though they are failing. Is this too much? Is it not enough? We are constantly questioning ourselves.
What does 4 days a week allow us? It allows our high school students not 1, but 2 days of instruction with their teachers every week. It allows our middle school students the chance to form a relationship with their teachers. Right now, your average middle schooler spends less than 2 live hours a week with a given teacher. It allows our elementary school students time to connect with their teachers, with their friends, and receive consistent lessons taught by their teachers. 4 days a week allows teachers the opportunity to teach instead of playing catch-up or on unfinished work or preparing to send home virtual assignments. It allows parents the opportunity to fill in gaps when their child comes home instead of trying to teach the curriculum after a long day of work. It allows our community to function the way we used to, with teachers leading instruction, parents supplementing where needed, and students making the progress made in years past.
Henry Ford said, "If you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always got." If you are okay with 65% of our hybrid students failing, then keep doing what we've been doing. If not, something different must be done. Virtual will be an option for those who don't feel comfortable. We must bring our students back in the classroom, back to school 4 days a week.
What's the plan to deal with these failing students? Because we will face this reality next fall. Is it mass retention, repeating the current school year for all students in the same classrooms they are now, bring them back for a semester next year, and then advance them to the next grade level?
All county schools are not in the same boat. For years, Fox has been the leader in Jefferson County. Our students have always outperformed neighboring districts. Now, we can't keep up with these districts. Festus has been all in since the beginning. Windsor is all in K-5. For the first time ever, these Jefferson County districts are leaps and bounds ahead of us and leaving Fox in their wake.
I recently attended a meeting with about 10 teachers. At least 4 of those teachers mentioned that they had students in the past week that were hospitalized due to severe depression and attempted suicides. That was sickening to me. My own 14-year-old has been experiencing some extreme lows and now sees a counselor. On his virtual learning days,
Time.
he sits in front of his computer all day long. His mood at the end of the day is down, drained, depressed, and defeated. It's sad. On the 2 days he actually gets to associate with others at school, his mood is noticeably better.
Thank you,
We've
ladies.
also experienced COVID. The effects of isolation and excessive screen time has been far worse on our children than COVID. We need to get back in school.
Next, we have Bettina Woolsey.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted to speak tonight to show my support of our superintendent. She has kept a positive perspective. Sorry, I'll get emotional. She's kept a positive perspective while carefully navigating the most difficult school year ever. Implementing things like Mission Mondays and highlighting staff who love their jobs and are on mission every single day to give students their very best. As a secondary education teacher, I see my students struggling like I've never seen before. From high school seniors who need teachers to guide and model structure, students who just need to connect, depression and anxiety is through the roof. As Jessica just mentioned, I too have heard that same result of 4 of our students at least, that's just the ones that I've heard of or she's heard of, that have been hospitalized in the last 3 weeks for attempted suicides. I'm far more terrified of losing one of our students to a mental health issue than COVID. COVID is scary. I've known people who've lost their lives to it as well. I get that it's a reality, but there is a 99.6% survival rate. As other people have already mentioned tonight, I do not feel like we can lose our children and our students to a virus that has that kind of a survival rate. So our students need us to be there for them. I'm the mother of 5 of our students that are in our schools. I watch my own secondary kids doing okay, but lots of them are not. My kids come from a household with structure and support. I watch my students who are struggling like crazy, or grades that I have from my students that are worse than I've ever seen in 16 years of teaching. I teach an elective, I teach cooking classes, they're fun. I hardly ever have students that have C's, D's, or F's, and I have a lot of them right now. And that's planning in ways that is setting them up for success. I watch my 3 gifted elementary kiddos who are struggling in many ways, but they're also being successful in other ways. I see kids learning to manage things at home better. There are positives of this, and I try and help my kids find the positives as well. But at the end of 2 fully virtual weeks, last week on Tuesday night, when my 3rd grader, who's 9 years old, was crying because he said, "Mom, I wish you weren't a teacher, so that you're here to help me with my schoolwork, like other kids' moms are."
30
Of course,
seconds.
We had a conversation about how I can still help him, but he just wishes he could do school like he used to do school, at school, with his teachers. That's difficult. We can get these kids back in. We can still socially distance. Maybe at the secondary level, hybrid should still be an option. That might keep our numbers a little bit lower at the high schools and the middle schools. I realize lunch and things like that are hard, but these elementary kids especially need to get back in 4 days a week. Thank you.
Debbie Arnold.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Arnold. First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Patel, and the central office and the board for their guidance during these unprecedented times. I know this year has been difficult to navigate, and I just want you to know that it is truly appreciated. To the teachers, thank you. Sorry, I'm going to get very emotional. I know this is probably going to be the hardest year of your careers, and a year you will never forget. Thank you for going above and beyond to educate our children. I understand what you are going through, as I am a teacher too. A teacher that found it in July that I was going to be in a position I hadn't been in over 14 years. Then that I was going to be in person, then virtual. Then after a month of virtual, in person 5 days a week. I get it, I'm living it too. I cannot begin to express my gratitude to each and every one of you. My kids have been nothing but blessed with extraordinary teachers during their time in the district. But first and foremost, I am a mom who has watched her sophomore daughter, a straight A gifted student who is also a musician and an athlete, a girl who loves school, hate it, a kid who loved her freshman year and now dislikes it so much. A girl has become sad and withdrawn at times. Although she's still managing her grades, I am more worried about her emotionally than anything else. A mom of a 7th grade boy who I am asking to manage a schedule like a college student at home. A kid who is also gifted but struggling to organize and manage his time, and quite honestly has lost his enthusiasm for school. And I'm not sure we'll ever get it back. Is being in person tough? What in 2020 hasn't been? It has its ups and downs. I never know when the shoe is going to drop and I will be virtual again. I do have to remind some students to pull up masks and social distance better. Being 100% in person has its challenges, don't get me wrong, but the challenges are really no more than what I've seen in a normal year. The positives definitely outweigh the negatives. Our kids are not okay, they are hurting. As a parent and teacher, I am hurting for them. I am asking that we think about these kids and what they need emotionally and physically.
30 seconds.
They need a sense of normalcy. They need more than 2 days in person. Please bring them back. Thank you.
Our final comment this evening is from Ginger Keith.
Good evening. I want to thank everybody for letting me speak tonight. I want to tell you that, sorry, I'm very nervous. And to let you know I have 3 kids and 1 in middle school, doing okay. First year, 2 in 2nd grade that are having a really tough time. They struggle anyway, academically. I fight for a 504 plan, I fight for an IEP. They got them, but it's not enough. They're failing miserably. And I don't know what else to do. I work. Most everybody in the community has a 2-income family. I don't know how they're doing it because I am burning bridges at both ends. Luckily, I have a work that lets me teach them till about noon and then I head in. I'm there till 7, 8 o'clock at night. I just don't know how everybody is doing it and how these kids are managing at home. I leave my 13-year-old at home with my children for like an hour, and it makes me nervous as can be. Luckily, I have parents that are down the street that they can go to for most of the time if they're home. I've talked to 3 other schools and a Jesuit school. They've had 0 transmission in school from either a teacher or student. I don't know what ours is. I don't know if we've had any where somebody's come and given it. I don't see those statistics at all. I just kind of want to know that. And I wouldn't send my kids if I didn't feel that they were safe, and I know that this is a safe school. And I just want to let you know that my daughter went to school when she had 0 immune system because my daughter went through chemotherapy for 3 years. She had leukemia when she was 2.5, one of my twins. And I had to send her. She had to get an education. She had no immune system. If anybody's been through cancer treatments, your A and C count was 0. So she was at risk for anything and everything as soon as she walked into school. But I had no choice. She had to get an education. She had to go to school. I'd get in trouble. I couldn't take her Children's Hospital to get an education there because she wasn't physically in
30
staying
seconds.
in the hospital. So I had to send her. So you guys need to choose two. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
No, that was it.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is 3.2 Superintendent Comments. I remembered this time.
I actually have an update later, which I'll be talking about a lot of this at that point. So right now, I'll just hand it off to Dr. Gilman.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. So at elementary level, the top thing on our to-do list is our building administrators and secretaries are working on our data for second semester. So we've sent out for parents to make that choice, and they're trying to get the data so we can kind of look at our flexible and virtual learning programs. So thank you to everybody that's responded, and I know that they are still missing a little bit, so if you haven't responded, please get in touch with your building and help us out. It would be greatly appreciated. I want to thank Declan and Robin in the math committee for their work this year. Narrowing down a resource is kind of tough work, and right now they have 7 on display, 7 different resources at the service center, and teachers are working their way through those, so thank you guys for that. Let's see, the elementary conferences this year, the attendance was 84%, and those were all via Zoom, so we're pretty happy with that. Parents, as always, are interested, as you could see this evening. They're interested and they're involved, and we really appreciate them being flexible with that. And then finally, I want to thank all the staff and local agencies. Our 2 police departments, for example, did Shop with a Cop. Dr. Cardona is going to talk a little bit more about that, but we have a very, very generous community, and this is a great time of need, and our school has definitely stepped up to meet that need. So really, really proud of them, and just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
So I'm going to pick up where Randy left off with, I've heard a lot of people say this year, there's 2 words, there's forgiveness and there's grace. And I want to actually add a 3rd word, and that's giving. We've been collecting data and looking at, and as Randy mentioned, the amount of giving to our community this year. Fox High School Letterman's Club alone supplied gifts to 266 students. That's incredible. And then district-wide, we have helped 774 students. Those are students who may not have had anything for Christmas. And we're all hurting, and we're all going through tough times, and we have banded together to support our family and our kids. Yes, we have grace, and we have giving. And I think that that's something that as a district we need to celebrate. That is something that we've always come together. When somebody says, I have a need, we find a way to meet that need. And, I do want to thank our police officers for the Shop with a Cop and our students that have banded together, the people in the community that have given to make somebody else's Christmas extra special this year. So I think that's a huge celebration for us. As we've gone through the year, we have an administrator leadership development program that different people throughout the district can come to and learn how to be an administrator and a leader. This year, we have 22 participants in that program. They've actually had just 3 meetings. They do those all through Zoom. They've kind of been focusing on, how to be a good leader, communication as a leader, and how to tell the difference between what's important and what's urgent. And then they meet every month to go through that as we're developing new leaders in our district, which is really important. And then I want to thank all the staff, nurses, bus drivers, teachers. You guys are working incredibly hard. And I know that even though you don't feel it and you're struggling, and we know our students are struggling, you are making an impact. And I want you to know that that impact is being felt. So I thank you for that, and I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
A couple of things. First of all, I want to congratulate the Fox football team for having the success they had this season, even in the middle of all this. That was quite an accomplishment, and we're very proud of them. I know Bob and I, we think that we've come from the best football team we ever had, but there was a little difference when we were there. There wasn't a state championship thing, so we didn't have to go through that. But that was a great accomplishment for them. You know, the letters that you've sent, I spent a great deal of my time reading through all those letters. And the truth is, there's not one letter that I have received and read that wasn't legitimate. What concerns weren't legitimate. It doesn't matter what side of the issue the person was on, it was legitimate. Everything is right about this. This is just a difficult situation. I want to mention one other thing right now, too. I've watched President Hansen literally answer every one of those for the Board of Education. And let me tell you something, folks, that's not an easy thing to do. And I want you to know, Vicki, how much I appreciate that and the work that you've done on that, because that has been difficult. And Dr. Patel, she's been in the same situation. The other thing I want to say is I'm glad that everybody's exercising their First Amendment rights here. You should feel comfortable coming to us with your concerns without fear of any kind of reprisal or anything else, because that is guaranteed in the Constitution of the United States and in your First Amendment rights. And so I applaud you for exercising those. Other than that, I wish everybody has a wonderful Christmas, and I know right now people are being vaccinated throughout the country, so the cavalry's on the way. Hopefully by this time next year, we'll look back on this and think, man, that was really terrible. And so we'll see what happens.
Well, I want to thank you for coming out tonight to participate in the board meeting. As many of you know, I am a lifelong member of the community and a former teacher of the school district. And over the years, I have watched the people of our community become divided over a number of issues that have plagued our school district. But this time, we are facing a real plague, a common enemy that we can't see. I understand the situation is weighing so heavy on all of our hearts, and we are watching our community suffer in so many ways. Having to take part in making decisions that could impact the future of every individual and their families in this district is incredibly difficult. As a former educator, I know how badly these students need to be back in school and receiving the structure and education they so desperately deserve. However, I also know that we owe it to all the individuals in our district and community to keep everyone as safe as possible while we fight this unseen enemy. Determining whether to maintain a hybrid environment or return to 4-day in-person schedule is not an easy decision. We have to make considerations based on the number of factors. We are the largest school district in Jefferson County, and we employ more staff than any other district in our area. This means we require more substitutes to cover for teachers who are in quarantine or ill. Due to this pandemic, there are less substitutes to cover all the area schools. We cannot control the number of subs available, and the principals have to scramble to find people to fill positions. Also, when teachers are absent, our students are not getting the instruction they deserve, and their education is being negatively affected too. If we were to return to school in the red for a 4-day school week, we are risking the exposure of more individuals for a longer periods of time. This will increase the number of teachers, staff, students required to quarantine. In the event we cannot mitigate the staff needs due to the number of teachers in quarantine, we may have to go back to a fully virtual schedule. That situation would not be moving us in the right direction. We want more than anything to move forward and get our students and staff back into the classroom full-time when we know it is safe for everyone. I also want to mention how fortunate our school district has been to not experience any loss to this terrible disease. My heart goes out to every family that has suffered any hardship or loss due to this pandemic. As Christmas rapidly approaches, I hope that our community can find it in their hearts to come together and support one another as we navigate through this incredibly difficult time. I want to thank all of the staff of our district for going above and beyond. We so greatly appreciate everything you have done this year. And I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Just a couple things. As we've all witnessed and felt, this is a trial and tribulation that none of us have had to face before. And it's a time when you have to weigh education and safety at the same time of students. And that's a difficult thing to try to work through about how the school district, its administrators are going to manage that. And I think we just need to be patient with that, as difficult as it is. With the new virus control vaccines that are out there, hopefully it'll get better. Who knows when, but at least there's some sun on the horizon out there to help. You know, it hasn't always just affected students and parents. I have 2 daughters that work in the district and a son-in-law. My 2 daughters were both quarantined and could not work for a number of days, and so those kinds of things affect staffing and the individual teachers personally, because they'd like to be here but they can't. And so there's a lot of things out there to weigh and judge and try to manage that we've never had to deal with before in the district. And so I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. We just need to be patient, as difficult as that is, and hope that it gets better as soon as possible. Thanks.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you to all of our support staff, our food service folks, our custodians, maintenance, the bus drivers, and our business office folks for all the hard work they've done and how they've continued on through this and adjusted and been able to maintain and keep things going in support of our staff and our students, and to keep that going. So I just want to say thank you all very much, and just want to wish everybody a happy Merry Christmas, and hopefully you get to spend a little bit of time relaxing through the holidays, and also to have a wonderful new year.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that were in the weekend update for the school board. One is that through the work of Maria Bielik, who's been working closely with DESE, since we received a grant for Project Lead the Way, that's STEM elective classes in middle school, we were told that we had grant money fully funded for equipment and teacher training and resources for 2 middle schools. And Maria kept working with the folks from DESE and kept her relationship with them, and when some more money was released, they awarded us the grant for the other 2 schools. So now we are fully funded for 2 more STEM elective classes at all 4 middle schools at no cost to the district for next school year. That includes the teacher training, teacher computers, classroom equipment, and classroom computers for that project. So it's an extraordinary accomplishment. And as Dr. Cardona was mentioning, the school district is reaching out and taking care of over 700 students over the winter break for the Christmas holidays. Jamie Cavato, our Director of Federal Programs, is the person who's coordinating that work to make sure that there's no family that we are aware of in the district who is at need at Christmas time, who doesn't have presents to put under the tree for their students. So I wanted to thank her for that also. Thank you.
I just wanted to say a quick thank you to all of our staff for everything and all the work that they've done since school started and even through the summer preparing for school. As far as our teachers, nurses, like John said, all of our support staff, everybody is working harder than ever. And I just wanted to make sure that you realize, or that they realize, that we see that and we see what they're doing, and it's so appreciated. other than that, happy holidays to everyone.
I'd just like to reiterate what Mr. Sluse said earlier. I think it's great that people feel they have the opportunity to speak to us either by email or in an open board meeting. And also thank Dr. Patel and Mrs. Hanson for their response to all of your emails. We get a lot of them. I think Dr. Patel gets probably twice as much, but they always take the time to respond, and I think that's very important that they're recognized for that. And those of you who've been watching board meetings know that my feelings about returning to school full-time, we are in the red zone. I'm still a believer that as long as we're in the red, staff and students should not be in our buildings full-time. My priority is safety in our buildings. Am I aware that our kids are not getting the education they deserve? Absolutely. I have a third grade grandson, and no, he's not getting his third grade education. I know that teachers are frustrated they can't teach, and our parents are not happy about the education our kids are getting. But I also see a daily report of how this virus is attacking our school community. 5, 6, 8, 10 daily reports of positive testing for this virus, which could impact as many as 10, 30, or 50 or more for quarantine. Who educates our kids when this happens? We have spent over $300,000 this year on subs, and we're still not able to fill positions that are needed to ensure the education and safety of our kids. Our district cannot continue to sustain that. Dr. Patel will announce her decision later this evening regarding returning to school the next semester. Whether I agree or disagree, her decision will remain the same. I respect that, and I respect the work and effort she and her administration have put into making this decision. I will do whatever is necessary to be sure our students and staff are safe and get the education they deserve. This decision is not a debate. We simply agree to disagree, but we'll follow her lead. Thank you, Dr. Patel, for your unending dedication to Fox School District.
Hello, everyone, and thank you all for coming out tonight. My opinion on returning to 4 days is probably different from most of the board members here. But I feel like I have 3 lenses that I need to explain and remind the board and the community that doesn't know that my 3 lenses. My first lens is as a mom of a senior and a sophomore at Fox High School. So I have the perspective, the only perspective up here on the board of a parent. My second lens is through as an educator. I teach in Windsor School District. I teach 2nd grade, and we have been back to school 4 days a week since the week of Halloween. So I have all my kids in my room, so I know what it's like to be in the classroom with all of them. And then my third lens is as a board member and doing what's right for the community, or what I think the community wants. So as the viewpoint, or as the lens of mom, I've told my kids, guys, wear your mask, wash your hands, stay socially distanced, do whatever you can to make sure that you don't get COVID, or if you are exposed, that you don't pass it on to grandpa. You know, we don't want that. So, but there are things that the kids have done in the fall that have allowed them not to, I guess, have social distance, because they were both in after-school sports. So you can't do social distance on the soccer field or in the flags. So like wrestling right now is going on, you can't social distance during that as well. So I hope that we do go back 4 days a week starting 2nd semester. I just want to share a little bit of input on teachers, like how I set up my classroom, and maybe this will make the board feel a little comfortable. To make it work with all the kids in school. We have like routes and halls where you have, this hall only goes this direction and this hall goes this direction, so that we're not crisscrossing each other. We try to stay socially distant, but we can't with the whole class. So I say, guys, you have to have your arms out, stay socially distant, or stay this distance. So my kids are constantly doing this. I'm constantly doing this. But it's a big deal that I continually remind the kids that, because I've made the promise to their parents that I will do everything in my power to keep them safe and to make sure that they are not exposed. I feel like I set up a environment where the kids are happy, they are healthy, and they are learning in the safest environment that they can possibly be in. Now, the last lens is through the board and what our community needs. We are divided, but it's okay to be divided. There's not a right or wrong answer to this. There's just problem solving. So we have a problem with concerns about going back to school. You don't feel comfortable. So there's a solution. Then you choose to go virtual. Your child goes virtual. And then if you feel comfortable, then let us as a board support, encourage, whatever, Dr. Patel to let our kids go back 4 days a week. Thank you.
Changing the subject just a tiny bit. I did go look at all of the math curriculum over in the Media Center, and I would encourage all of the teachers that are going to be using these math materials to really take the time to go over and really look through the material. Mr. Fitzpatrick has sent out a link that's got links, or he sent out an email with links to all the curriculums that are over there. You can check things out, but really take the time, because this is going to be what, choices are going to be made, and you're going to have to teach them. So I would encourage everybody to go over and look at them. They're there this week. The vendors are there. On the same note as everyone else, I just want to say I feel like our students need to be back in school 4 days a week, 5 days a week. I realize that it is a scary situation, and I think that if I were a teacher and I were worried, I would be taking my own precautions. And, if you've got kindergarten kids, they're way down here, they need those hugs. You can give them those hugs, you're not in each other's face. If you've got big students, they understand and they know. And if you're worried, you need to make that 6-foot barrier for yourself, teaching from the front of your room. But our kids are suffering, our community's suffering, and I think that our educators can make this work, and I'm trusting Dr. Patel to make the right decisions as we move forward. And I think that we are problem solvers, and we will figure out how to do this safely. And, it takes a lot of prayer sometimes, and we just have to trust that what we're going to do, if we can bring kids back, is going to be more beneficial than staying home and not being in school. And it's just time that we get the kids back in school.
I just have one quick comment. I'm anxious to hear what Dr. Patel has to say. I know there may be some questions for her. I want to clarify that this Board of Education has totally supported Dr. Patel as she's gone through the reentry plan. There's only been 2 times that we've actually taken a vote on anything. One was to make a mask mandate, and the other time was at her request that we go all virtual the 2 days before Thanksgiving and the week afterwards. So the board does totally support Dr. Patel. My other request of the school community and the community as a whole, I am pleased and proud that our community and our staff are so passionate in their beliefs about what needs to happen for our students and our kids. However, I would ask, I'm going to piggyback on what Dr. Cardona said. Besides showing forgiveness, grace, and giving, I would ask that you be kind to each other It is fine for us to disagree, and it is not personal when we disagree. We need to be able to express our opinions openly and honestly and have that be okay. It's okay to disagree. So no matter what happens tonight in terms of Dr. Patel's sharing her plan, if somebody expresses a different opinion when you go back to the buildings or when you encounter people in the community, I would hope that you would be kind to them and allow them to be in their own place about it. We all come from different perspectives and we have different experiences. And I think that that will do a lot toward making things work. So now I'll turn it over to Dr. Patel and share more about her plan.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for everybody for being here today. Thank you to all the students back there, also that were outside in the cold and holding the signs. We appreciate you. We see you, and I just from the bottom of my heart wanted to make sure I thank the students that are out there. So before I get into, usually when I do the superintendent update, I always give a little bit of data. So before I get into the data, I just wanted to make sure that you understand some of the things that we look at. It's not just one variable, there's a lot of things we look at. One of the things that we obviously take into consideration are the CDC guidelines. And if you look on the CDC reopening plans for schools, it even says that these are just recommendations, and it even says that they're offering broad guideposts. They're not saying just look at one thing and make a decision. So we look at CDC guidelines. We talk to Jefferson County Health Department on a regular basis. I meet with them every week. The health director is in our superintendent's meetings every week, and we talk about what's happening in the community. We talk to her about what our plans are right now, including this plan. I called her and I walked her through what we were going to talk about tonight, and they support it. And they even say sometimes, they give me guidance like, oh, maybe you should do this or maybe you should do that. So I don't want anybody to think that these decisions are made on an island. Please know that we do our homework, we read, we research, we talk to a variety of people, including superintendent meetings. There's so many districts, right? So when we meet with superintendents, some of them are going K through 5 for 4 days. Some of them have been full in 5 days since August. So I get to hear their perspective and say, okay, what are your challenges? Because you have 18,000 kids and you've been 5 days in, are you seeing a higher positivity rate? Are you seeing more quarantines? What are you doing as far as mitigating factors? So I wanted to make sure that you guys understood that, again, decisions are made based on a variety of factors, and it all depends on different things. So with that being said, a couple of data points that we always show the community. The first one is our Fox C-6 data. This is current case count. So right now we have 38 positive students, and we have 235 that are in quarantine. We've got 6 positive staff members and 33 in quarantine. So that's our own internal data. And we're lucky because we have been in hybrid since the first day, except for that week after Thanksgiving, that we can actually see, is the transmission happening in schools? Or is it the community spread that's impacting the staff and the students? The next slide that I show, this one might be a little hard, it's easier for you guys to see than me on the TV. This is week by week what Jefferson County shares with us, and I just kind of put it in a cleaner chart. If you look at it, it's the 7-day average for 100,000 cases, and then you can see as the progression goes, and then on the right is the positivity rate, and anything in red is obviously when we were in red. The dash that you see, basically I didn't get the data for that particular piece, and this last week's I talked to Jefferson County Health Department today, and apparently they're having issues at the state level with data, and it's a whole new system apparently, so they're trying to get all that information and they're behind on it. But they did tell me we are still in red. So if you look at this, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is our 7th week as a community being in red. If I was to predict, just because of the numbers, I think we're going to be in here for a while. Now, all this information that you see, I see, obviously, and it weighs on me just like it weighs on you. I think about it every single moment. So as I've been thinking about it, I thought of a phrase that I heard a lot growing up. And for those of you who don't know this, and I think most of you know this by now, my story, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit about it. I was born in Kenya, and at a very early age, my parents sat us down. I have one brother, 2 sisters, and myself, and they told us, one day you're going to go to the United States, and you're going to go there because you're going to get a great education. And when you get a great education, the sky's the limit, and all doors open up for you. And sure enough, years later, my mom and dad, we packed our bags, and my mom came up to the United States with us. My dad stayed in Kenya, and they stayed apart, and they sacrificed for us. But while in Kenya, there were a lot of different tribes and different communities and ethnic groups. One of the communities there are the Maasai people. And they're fierce, and they're smart, and they're tall. If you ever look up the Maasai group, or if you know about them, they're just super tall people. I don't know why, but they are. Well, one of their things that they always say when they greet one another is this phrase, Asarian Nakara. And that's just like part of their hello. But what this phrase means is they ask every single time, how are the children? To them, that's their hello. Every single conversation, how are the children? Because to them, to the Maasai, the next generation is their utmost priority. They count on their children to be taken care of. And what's equally amazing to me is the response that the Maasai give back is all of the children are well. It's not some of the children are well, or my children are well. It's all of the children are well. So when I think about all this, I really look in the mirror, right, every single time as we're navigating this pandemic, as everything keeps changing on us. And I look in the mirror and I ask myself, how are the children? And I cannot say all the children are well. And that's me looking in the mirror. So when we talk about next steps, one of the things, JP, when we talk about next steps, since March 18th, 2020 is when we went into virtual world. And then we came into hybrid. Think about that, March 18th. We have learned and we have grown from this pandemic. We don't teach the same way that we did in March, right? If you think about CDC, they have changed because they learn more. Do you remember in the summer? I remember when we'd go grocery shopping and we'd bring back and you'd wipe down everything because CDC said that it could be transmitted based on contact surfaces. That was a thing. Then CDC said, or other people said, masks work, masks don't work. Masks work. Yes, they don't. They changed, and you grew and you evolved. Even quarantine, the most recent one, right? 14 days is now 10 days. You can even test out of it after 7. So things continue to evolve, and I would hope that as your superintendent, you want me to learn as we go along, to grow and adjust and be flexible. So I admit wholeheartedly, and I never denied it, that I have said, as long as we are in the red, we will not be bringing more kids in for more in-person learning. I have said that. I said that 7 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. But as I said that, I also learned. I learned that we do have really strong mitigating factors in place, including the best nurses who are doing the best job in contact tracing. We are really aggressive in contact tracing, and I think that's why our transmission rate is low. I truly do believe that. We are making sure that everybody is quarantined when they need to be. So those are some of the things that I am learning. I'm learning that Jefferson County now finally has a mask mandate. It will help in our community. It will help the numbers if we take responsibility, because all of us have to do it if we want to keep our schools in session. So based on all of that, my plan is for second semester, January 19th, to go K through 12, 4 days. Now, I know that there are going to be people, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but before I get to that, why second semester, January 19th? Couple of reasons. First thing, January 19th is a natural change in schedules and teachers for a lot of secondary, including elementary as well. In addition to that natural change, without a pandemic it just is, but with the pandemic, remember we gave parents a choice, whether you want to be in flexible learning plan or do you want to be all virtual, and we knew that was going to change, so we had to change all the scheduling, and Dr. Cardona and Dr. Gilman and the principals have been working tirelessly to create this. Also, January 19th, luckily this year, we're starting 2 weeks later. Usually, remember, semesters end in December. This actually worked out for us because it gives us 2 weeks after winter break, just like we needed the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving in case there's a spike. That gives us those 2 weeks. So January 19th would be the day. Parents, I know that some of you committed knowing that, or thinking that if we were gonna be in red, we're not gonna be bringing more kids in. So if you have questions about the choice you made, please make sure you reach out to your buildings. I also want parents to understand though, when we bring our kids back in, there may be times, because we chose the flexible learning plan, remember the flexible learning plan could be fully virtual, or it could be more days in, or it could be hybrid. Please understand if we have to close down individual buildings, for example, if there's a 5% positivity rate, we had to do that with 2 buildings this year already. It may not be 10 days, but it would be for a few days. Please understand, parents, if we have to close down individual buildings because we can't staff it. Simple. If we're going to get more kids in the buildings, there will be naturally more quarantines. We know there will be. But we are struggling with staffing, and hence you probably, parents, you even saw the email from your principals asking for subs. So please understand that would be another consideration for individual buildings closures. Staff, I know that this is challenging. I know you're tired. I know you're stressed. I know you're worried. And I know, frankly, that tonight there's going to be quite a few of you that are going to be upset. I know that. I recognize that. But what I ask is if you're upset with this decision, to really think about what your passion is. And I think I can understand how it can be lost because we're in a pandemic. We're worried. We're worried for our safety. But we got into this because we love what we do. That is our calling. We have been given the honor, including me sitting up here as your superintendent, to take care of our kids and our children. We have done a phenomenal job. You have done a phenomenal job all first semester. You have worked tirelessly to make sure they're okay. And so now we just need to bring them back and do the best we can, like we have been. And then students, my goodness, your grit. I cannot say enough about that. You have persevered, you have done your best, you show up, you don't want to be in Zoom. We did a student survey and I read every single comment of the 2,300 students that responded. And that survey is one that we give every year, but this year we asked a few more questions about hybrid learning. And I heard and I read how you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you cannot handle, and I couldn't either, 32 emails on a single day. You've never had this much work before. You're failing when you've had A's and B's. And I read every single one. And the one of them, there were lots of them, but this one, the grade book doesn't care about circumstances. I thought that said a lot for whoever said that. You know, they are worried. The grade book does not care about a pandemic or circumstances. So, with all of that, I just wanted to let you know that January 19th, even if we're in the red, We will be coming back 4 days. We'll continue to monitor the data. Of course, you know I will, and everybody will between now and then. But right now, the plan is that, and it would be K through 12. So I'm just going to leave you again with the last slide that basically just asks the same question, JP. Asarian Nakara, how are the children? And let's continue to make sure they're okay. So thank you for being here. And if the board, at this time, I think I'm going to open it up. The board wants to have a conversation, discussion about this plan. Please, let's do that right now.
I thought maybe some of the board might have questions. I don't know.
I think the plan makes sense, but it's always within the context of the situation that you're in. And so right now, what you're looking at, you can bring our kids back, and we can do it within the guidelines of the CDC because we're not experts, and that makes sense to me. That makes sense. Now, what if it goes up to 45%, the positivity rate? What happens then?
I don't think we should block ourselves to any number. I think we continue to what we've been doing this entire time, which is talking to our Jefferson County Health Department.
Okay, because things can change pretty rapidly.
It can.
What sounds reasonable today may not be reasonable, but I know none of us are experts. I guess I've always been taught to follow the doctor's orders. And as long as we can do it and meet the CDC guidelines and recommendations for a safe reentry into school, that makes sense. If we can't do that, then we have to reevaluate, and I think everybody needs to understand that. We're not going to knowingly put our community at risk just because we're committed to one thing and one thing only.
Crystal, it looks like you want to say something.
I do have a question. Nisha, you talked about your mitigation. Now, with the hybrid, we had half the amount of students in the classroom, and we know that possibly these numbers are going to increase substantially. What kinds of things, because the CDC is still saying 6 feet with a mask, what are some things that you're going to recommend that's going to measures to help protect our students? And as an elementary teacher, I'm looking at specials, lunchrooms, recess, that kind of events with all of those students in the buildings. So I'd like to know what kind of measures you're going to put in place to help with mitigation, because we know that it's important for our families who are dealing with students in multiple buildings to understand that there's consistency across from building to building, so that when their children come home, they know what their exposures and all of that has been.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to continue the strong mitigation factors that we already have in place. So the face masks, and I know that there's some concerns about that, please, at the building level, if you still have concerns about face masks not being followed by staff or students, please talk to the building admin. We will get on that, and we will continue to be vigilant about that. So face masks was one that we'll continue to do. Obviously, Mr. Barbara Gallo is here, but our cleaning and disinfecting will continue. We will make sure that we will do our contact tracing with our nurses the best we can, that we have been doing. And then one of the biggest challenges, obviously we're gonna do the hand washing, et cetera, but one of the biggest challenges we all know is gonna be social distancing. And when you look at the CDC guidelines, when you talk to Jefferson County Health Department, when you talk to superintendents who have been in this scenario that we're about to step in, they all say social distancing will be to the extent possible. They know it cannot be guaranteed the entire time. So as Ms. Chamberlain pointed out, she put strategies in place in the classroom. Lunchrooms, I know that one of the big things that Dr. Cardona is working with the secondary principals is, can we find alternate locations so it's not that packed in Fox High School cafeteria? Can we use other larger spaces so we can spread it out? Things like that is what we're gonna have to just get stronger and tighter on. Do we need to have face-to-face meetings with the faculty if it can be avoided, especially if we're trying something new and bringing kids back in. Let's minimize all of that for right now. So becoming tighter on a lot of different things.
What about elementary cafeteria?
Same with elementary cafeteria. I know Dr. Gilman's been talking to his principals already as well.
Yes, and one of the things they will definitely try to do is they try to stretch that lunch schedule out as much as they can to, keep the kids from crossing and keep them stretched out. But like Dr. Patel said, we're gonna mitigate as much as we can mitigate. When I talked to schools that had been all in, I asked them about that. They still, even though they were all in, and even though they had lunch pretty normally in the elementary level, they weren't seeing the transmission between the kids. I think our biggest liability is still adult to adult transfer, just kind of from the data that we've seen so far.
Dr. Gilman, I'd like to share that a lot of the districts that I know that started out all virtual and then went to 5 days in, at the elementary level, they had the students eat lunch in their classrooms. And I know that's not possible at secondary. I think that's one of the things that I'm most concerned about is lunchtime at secondary level. It's a tremendous amount of students in the cafeteria, no matter, or even if you spread it out. I mean, both high schools, 1,500? Well, it's not 1,500 kids now because of virtual, but still, it's a lot of students in the same area, unable to social distance, and they don't have masks on, and that's really, that's a little bit frightening because we know that's when things are transmitted. St. Louis County has no inside dining for that very reason right now. So I hope that a plan can come up for that area. Maybe people can figure things out, but that's something that's going to be every day. So I hope we can, the people in the building come up with something. And I know at secondary that's not possible because you don't have a homeroom like you do in elementary. You have a classroom you can go to, and if need be, you can eat in the classroom. It's sort of like, I'm guessing that most of the teachers' lounge aren't used anymore in the buildings. People just eat by themselves because that's when transmission occurs, is when people have their mask off and they're eating. The other thing that I would like to ask about is, are we going to continue to quarantine and follow the guidelines with the contact tracing? So you're confirming that we'll continue to do that strategy?
Yes, we're going to follow Jefferson County County Health Department's guidelines, yes, okay, which are aligned to CDC.
And another thing that when there was discussion about sports and the inability, you can't social distance, and typically there's a lot of close contact and no mask wearing. I was wondering if some other strategies could be put in place there, like would it be possible to at least do temperature checks on athletes before events? Do we do that already? I don't know.
We do that for certain, like football, when we had towards the end and we were entering postseason, we started putting that into place. So they actually have their own set of guidelines and criteria for sports that we're following.
Mrs. Hanson, I think one thing too that our parents need to remember, and that sometimes it's not being followed, is if your kids are sick, you really do need to keep them home. Whether it's a cold, whether it's COVID, whether it's whatever, a flu, strep throat, there are a lot of things that can be transmitted, and parents tend to give their kids Tylenol and send them to school in a lot of situations, and we really need to be really vigilant right now with parents making sure they keep their kids home from school if they're running a fever or if they're sick in any way, so that we don't have instances.
Some other mitigation strategies maybe I can share are we do take temperatures in the morning, so I don't know what the possibility would be for our staff, our teachers to get thermometers. I take their temperature every morning, but like in the high school, since we're worried about the cafeteria, maybe you could take the temperatures first hour and then fifth hour or something, just to make sure that a child doesn't have a fever. And then the other thing with the elementary lunches, you put the kids in the group of 4, and those kids stay in that group of 4 during the classroom during lunch and during their specials. So those kids are around those four kids. So hopefully they like each other. And if not, they have to be with them for a whole quarter. But that is working, you guys. I cannot stress, that enough. I did have to quarantine one group, but that's it. That's all. So I just thank you for trying this and just giving the confidence to the community that we're going to try this and we're going to get our kids back is so important. Thank you.
I would like just to make one more comment, and that is what Dr. Patel indicated about being able to staff the buildings. I asked Dr. Patel to provide the information regarding subs and what our fill rate was and the cost, which she did. And it is a phenomenal cost, not that it's not worth it, but it's a phenomenal cost. Not even to the end of November, it's over $314,000 just for the subs. But our fill rate with those subs has still only been about 76%. So you need to know, and normally what we considered a good fill rate last year was 95%. We were concerned when it was 93. So that's, just know that that's an issue in terms of not being able to have people when staff are out, and that could be a factor, and be aware of that. And I think I would also ask the staff, we all have a tendency, I know when I was teaching, you come in when you don't feel good, and you push through it, and you think, I can do this. This is not the time to come in when you're sick. So even though you don't want to call in, because actually everybody that teaches knows it's more work to get a sub than to come on in and power through sometimes. But in this instance, to prevent the spread, that's exactly what needs to happen. So
can I address something real quick with the lunch numbers? So I just wanted to quickly look this up, but with, and high school is probably the biggest concern just because of the numbers. Both our high schools have about 1,800 students in them. With the numbers that have chosen virtual, we're going to be able to drop each lunch shift. Now, this doesn't always equal out. I don't have the same amount of kids out each lunch, but we're going to be able to drop each one of those lunch shifts by about 100 students, just because of the students that have chose virtual. So that in itself gives us more room. And like Dr. Patel said, being able to spread students at Fox High School out in the commons a little bit more, being able to use, at Fox High School, we've talked about using their multi-purpose room. It takes some setup and take down every day, but just some areas to spread out and allowing, because we have less students that are coming in, that does help with that as well. So.
One other question relative to, now we've asked people to commit at this particular point in time. They've already committed. Now that they know that their kid is going to be coming back to a full school, do they have an opportunity to pull their kids out and go all virtual?
Yes, and that's why I said for the parents, because I did change the condition, right? My condition before was, if we're in red, we're not going to bring kids in. Well, now I've changed that condition, so yes, if they have questions or they're wondering about their flexible learning plan option, to reach out to their buildings. I know elementary is still working on it, but I ask that you do that ASAP, and I ask because the reason we have to have that information for us to build the schedule and be ready in time to communicate to our teachers, these are your classes, this is what you'll be teaching, especially at the secondary. I know the secondary has already built their schedule and they were hoping to share it with their teachers by the end of this week, so obviously this is another kink. So we just ask parents, if you're going to change your mind, please let us know ASAP.
One other question relative to elementary classrooms. I know, many times we have teachers that end up with, a full load, 25 in a class. Is there any way that we can make the maximum load in any classroom 20? I've done the math, and the truth is, if we rearrange furniture, we could probably put 20 kids in a classroom and keep them socially distanced enough that it may not be 6 feet, but it may be 4 feet or 3 feet, and that would be, I think, a huge help for a kid if he's going to be there 7 hours a day to keep that. So have we made any attempt to try to keep those class sizes at a minimum and not overload. You know, I don't want a teacher coming to me and say, I've got 27 kids or 25 kids in my classroom, and I have no place to put them and separate them and go to work fearful every day that they're going to be exposed to COVID.
So once we get all the information from our families, Dr. Gilman is looking at balancing all the classes. Now, that obviously the board understands if we want to do that, that's adding staff, and we would have to be adding staff for that point. So we already have a couple of positions that we've posted just in anticipation of having to add at the elementary level. And once we look at the numbers and see where it's going, it may be more. So it would be adding additional staff.
Question?
Well, I'm excited about the opening in January, but I was looking at some data that was provided to us earlier, and really it's in regard to absences of support service people, not only the teachers, but aides, bus drivers, food service, custodians, administrators, and it's a list of how many were out on how many days and that kind of thing. Does that worry you, or can you handle that with those kinds of numbers of absences?
I think it's going to be just like it would be for the teachers, right? Yes, it is a concern, but right now I feel that our food service, bus drivers, custodians, we're staffed pretty well. Now, things may happen and we may have to end up quarantining, or someone may test positive, so that would be a concern. But I think at that point, we're gonna have to deal with that situation, how it comes.
I mean, I've seen ads online where the district has been looking for help through like Kelly Services and to some of these things. Is that still working for you if we need to do that?
Yes,
Okay.
so we're doing our best to try and get subs as needed as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Nisha, what are our numbers, because you sent out the survey for the elementary level a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was last week was the cutoff. How many students do we have that have signed up for full virtual?
Dr. Gilman, do you know off the top of your head right now?
Nope, they are still collecting that data. It just closed Sunday, and so we are missing some data there from unresponsive parents. So they're still working on that, collecting that. I think finding out maybe, what Dr. Patel has said this evening, we're anticipating there might be, a little bit of shifting as well. So,
okay.
Not sure.
I guess then I'll ask Tammy. We closed out the secondary.
The secondary.
Dairy's been closed out. So what are
did.
those numbers looking like, Tammy?
I think they pretty much were what they were right now, Dr. Cardona.
Overall, the number of all virtual students went down by like 1% overall for second semester than what it was first semester, but some buildings shifted. Like some went higher, some went lower. But overall, for all 4 middle schools and 2 high schools, we went down by 2%.
Okay.
I'm just a little bit concerned that, how will word get out to the parents in terms of a timeline if they're just supposed to, that they can change because they already made the commitment before they knew about coming back 4 days? Are you going to send them another notice, or will each principal contact their staff at the buildings contact their
Well,
people?
I'm hoping that they're listening right now, and I'm sure word has traveled faster than anything. And then we will ask our principals to send out, we'll put something together and send that
Ms.
out.
Hanson, I just, are we still having problems getting subs for teachers? Is that improving any at all?
I wouldn't say it's improving, I would say it's the same.
I know that in a normal circumstance, a normal year, if you don't have a sub in a classroom, some of the teachers are very willing to step up and pull those kids in to their classroom and cover for each other. I don't see how that can be done with this, what's happening, and
Right.
that's
It
my
is a
concern.
struggle.
Are we going to have classrooms that aren't going to have a sub, and how do we handle that?
And we already have that issue right now, so we try to, find people in the buildings that can cover it here and there, but it is a struggle. That is a real struggle. And Dr. Brock, I don't know if you want to add to that. Yep.
Like Dr. Patel said, that is a struggle. It's been an ongoing struggle. And when the county went into the red, it started getting a lot worse. But, you know, as you'll see tonight, we're still hiring subs. Even during the pandemic, we're still hiring subs. We're still working with Kelly Services. Our principals sent out emails to parents in the community asking if anybody is able to sub to please contact the district. We're reimbursing for the course of, or the cost of courses to become a sub, fingerprints, to become a sub, background checks, and the application fee. So just a plug there, if anybody's considering subbing, we're reimbursing all those things right now to try and bring more subs into the district. And the principals and the staff in the buildings are being amazing at being flexible and working through those issues each time they arise.
So are we?
Yeah, Vicki, I have one more question. At our last meeting, we had quite a few custodians who left the district. And I noticed on this one, we have a couple of more to replace. But how are we doing as far as our buildings and making sure there's enough custodians to clean these buildings to make sure that we are doing good mitigation? I hate that we're putting it all on the teachers to clean their rooms and things like that. That's extra stuff. So I want to make sure we have what we need to get the buildings clean.
And Mr. Barbagallo, you want to say anything regarding that?
Okay. Is it like, do we have like normal staffing, or do we have extra custodians in the buildings? Okay.
Are there student helpers also that you have employed?
Yes, so the additional would be Kelly Services, and then the subs we have, we've been using them every evening. During the day, we have our typical at a high school, there's 2 staff members. At a middle school and elementary level, there's 1 staff member. At night, at the high school, at each high school, there are 8 people. Middle schools have 2, and the elementaries have 2. Kelly Services will be adding 2 midday people to 2 locations to assist with stuff during the day as well as things at night. As they have more people available, every building will get a midday person as their staffing and are available.
How do you determine your staffing for your buildings? Because I'm thinking of Seckman Middle School offhand, because they are definitely overpopulated. So you said you have 2 custodians in that building?
2 custodians at night.
Okay. It just seems like they need more.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I just want to say I really respect and understand and support Dr. Patel in this decision. But it's my hope that as we move forward, if circumstances change and it's unsustainable, that an acknowledgement of this would be made by Dr. Patel, and then the plan would be readjusted, just like it's being readjusted now. That would be my hope, because depending on the circumstances, you know, I've always felt that the most important thing, you cannot change other people or things that are happening. All you can do is change how you respond to them. And so if the circumstances change, then I hope we would acknowledge that and then adjust as needed. If nothing else, I guess we should go on to the next agenda item. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay. The next item is Antonia Elementary School and Merrimack Heights projects update. Mr. Stewart.
So you have the latest report on the design team progress. So overall, the BRS teams are continuing in their design development phases of the additions and with construction documents phase of the summer renovations at Antonia Elementary. BRS members are continuing to meet with me, Scott Barbagallo, and other district staff to review design progress. The BRS has continuing meetings with permitting authorities in order to review the project design and schedule. Specifically for Antonia Elementary, regarding the addition and renovation, construction documents are proceeding for the summer renovation project. This includes HVAC and lining upgrades in portions of the existing building, and we've got a tentative schedule to advertise those packages in January and get those bids back in at the end of January, and hopefully have those for the board in February for the board's approval. And then the design development phase of the addition project is also proceeding. An update meeting with the school principals is tentatively scheduled for tomorrow, Wednesday, December 16th, and the construction design phase of the design is anticipated to begin shortly thereafter. Specifically for Merrimack Heights Elementary addition and renovation, an update meeting with school principals occurred on December 9th, that would be last week, and the design development phase drawings will be completed in late December, and the construction documents phase will begin at that time. And as far as the capital improvements from last summer, the contractors are still wrapping up their punch list, warranties, and as-built documents. Are there any questions?
Mr. Stewart, I believe most of the board, I'd heard from some people that wanted some information regarding the demolition of the old library at Merrimack Heights. Do you
Okay.
have cost figures on that? I know you provided some explanation, but I think
Right,
there's still a
so-
little bit concern there.
So the estimate that we currently have for the demolition overall is that the cost would be approximately $55,250 for the demolition. That's based on 6,500 square feet at $8.50 per square feet. It was also calculated on another method based on volume of the structure and linear feet of the footings and came out with a similar result. Now, there would be an offset to that because there would be, if we demolish the building there would also be $13,000 for additional electrical work. So, I mean, it'd be a savings on some electrical work. So the estimate would be $42,000 net savings. Now, one thing also to consider, one of the thoughts, of course, we're planning to build this nice two-story structure with classrooms, administrative offices, cafeteria area that's also a FEMA shelter, and there's going to be a lot of power required for that. And so one of the thoughts was, with demolishing that wing, that there would be the ability then to shift that power that's currently using that wing to help with the new wing. We may still, even if we're able to do that, there may still be some additional costs for upgrading electric and the like, but that was one thought. So if we determine that we're going to leave that wing, there's going to have to be some more investigation into what kind of additional electrical needs there will be for that new wing.
John, if I'm understanding you correctly, the demolition with the cost savings would be about $42,000. Would that be enough to do whatever needs to be done to make that old library area usable in a better fashion, as well as to upgrade the other electric that you were referring to? Because you wouldn't be spending the $42,000, so possibly you could do the necessary repairs?
I mean, that money could be allocated to some repairs. Now, what the extent of the repairs are to that wing of the facility, I do not have what that number is. But, I mean, we're talking about HVAC issues that would need to be corrected over there, and as we all know, those are not cheap either. There's also some water issues, humidity issues, plumbing. So, I mean, there's a lot to that. In discussions with, that I've had with Mr. Barbagallo and the architects, and you know, I'm the new one here to the team on that, but some of the thought process, as we discussed at the meeting last month, was that the long-range goal or plan for that site, with that wing sitting down and far away, and adding the new wing up towards the front, making that more of a circular, and then more down the road when other projects come for that building for additions or renovations, they would be focused more up towards the front to try to keep everything up on the one level. So there's a lot to think about whenever you're talking about demolition of that wing or keeping that wing.
What about just for storage? They had a lot of things outside stored that were just sitting outside, and there's never enough storage. Could it not be renovated for storage, open area, space to use?
I suppose that would be a possible solution, but I would also say that we've got a huge warehouse here, and I know it is pretty full at this point, but you're right, storage is always in short supplies at schools, but one of the things, and it's like in my own house, if I put something in a closet, it ends up getting pushed back in the closet and pushed back in the closet and pushed back in the closet. So while storage could be valuable, it could also wind up being a sore.
Okay, I want some clarification on a few things. First of all, how many square feet do we have there?
The calculation was on 6,500 square feet.
Okay, and it's an all masonry building, correct?
Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah, I would say yeah. Yeah. Okay, now here's my problem. We're getting ready to spend, what, $6 million there to do a new job, or $7 million?
It's seven. I think it's 7.
Okay. Generally speaking, to build and that building's only 19 years old, that particular area, right?
I think it's more like 29.
20, something like that, yeah. Pretty new. Actually, it's the newest building.
1991, I think, was
right. Newest building on that campus. If we were to build that today, it would probably cost us about $200 a square foot. Maybe a little less than that, but not much. So we're going to demolish $1 million building, and we can't find a some kind of useful function for that particular space. I just find that astounding. And I can't believe that we can't come up with a design mechanism to save that space, and I can guarantee you our teachers could figure out how to use that space. And I guess when I did the tour at that building, I saw all these chairs and things stacked up outside the causeway someplace. It looked terrible, and it was like, they have no place to store things. At $200 a square foot, 12, that would be $1.2 million that we'd be tearing down. I can't believe that we're not clever enough to come up with a way to use that. Now, the water problems aren't just about that end of the building. That whole wing has always been an issue with water problems, going down to the corridor that comes down from the upstairs going down there. So I don't understand why that hasn't been fixed over the years. But we're going to go to the community and say we're going to tear down $1 million building, and then we're going to build a $6 million. I think we got to come up with a better solution than that. I would like for us to look at some possible solutions in use of that space. And you don't know, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, you may need that space there. It sure is better than pulling in trailers at some point, that's for sure. So anyway, I'd like for us to look at that.
We can certainly do that.
A question or comment on that? Or would it be helpful, Dr. Patel, if the board made a motion not to demolish that portion so it's clear?
That would be great.
then I'll put in the motion that we find a way to repurpose the newest section of that building rather than tear it down, and make any repairs to the heating and cooling that we need to make.
Can I get a second on that? Anybody want to second that?
I second it.
Okay, motion and second on the floor. All in favor?
Yes.
Motion passed. All right. The next item is financial report. Mr. Stewart, you're on the hot seat tonight for a while.
Why should this meeting be any different?
Yeah.
All right, so you have in front of you the financial report that you're used to seeing, and this is for the 5 months of the fiscal year through the end of November, and you also see the familiar bar graph. I do want to point to the bar graph. If you look at the month of November that was completed, the dark gray all the way at the right is higher than last year's red. So, and it's higher by $2.3 million. So, so that's good news for us. Our, revenues are trending as normal, well, except for we're down about $2.3 million over a year ago as far as against budget, and that can all be attributed to lost state aid that was withheld at the beginning of this year. To help offset that, because if you're thinking, how are our reserves up when our revenues are down, our expenditures through the first 5 months of the year are trending $3.1 million better than budget at this, or better than last year at this point. So, and we're also trending well on the budget. We're 5 months in, and we're just under 31% of budget expended for expenditures. So that is all good and well. The problem comes as, you can see looking at this graphically from July through November. November is always our low time as far as our fund balance because we don't start receiving our local taxes until the month of December. And so November is a very difficult month to get through. And you can see over the years, we've declined and we've declined and declined. And it's not going to be tenable. You've seen the operating fund balance projections that I've shared with the board. You have that document as well. And on our current trajectory, our fund balances at the end of this year, if nothing changes, will be 11.22%. If budgets go on as they do following the salary schedules that we already have set, and assuming that insurance is going to go up 4%, maybe 5%, something like that, and you have the regular cost of inflation, various items, fund balances at the end of June in 2022, so 18 months from now, would be 10.66%. A year after that, assuming, again, we just follow the normal trajectory, we would be at 8.28%. Now, once you drop below 10% as an ending fund balance, you get a nice letter from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for the state of Missouri that says, hey, are you aware you're below 10% fund balance? Now, the following year, in 2024, June 30th, we would be at 4.25%. The good thing about 4.25%, not that it's good, but it's not 3%, because 3% is when you become financially distressed as a school district, if your fund balances drop to 3%. And at that point in time, that is one of the reasons that a school can be determined, district can be determined to be unaccredited or provisionally accredited, and that the state can take over the running of the district. After 2024, everything is negative, and that cannot happen. We are not allowed as a school district to have negative fund balances. So the picture that I'm drawing here is we'll be okay at the end of this year. The next 3 years progressively get worse if nothing changes. There's two main ways to change things. One way is budget cutting. Budget cutting is never fun, and it's never a desirable thing to do, because you're getting rid of programs, people, things that the district has worked hard to implement, and all for the benefits of their students. So once you start getting into the realm of continual cost cutting, there comes a point in time when you're not just cutting fat, you're cutting muscle, and that's when it becomes problematic. The other side, there's two sides to the equation. There's revenue and there's expenses. So as expenses, if you can't, in my estimation, you can't cut enough expenditures out of our budget without negatively affecting education and the district overall to solve this problem. So the other side is revenue. We've got state revenue that is determined by the formula calculation based on student attendance and the like. We don't have a ton of control over that. We get federal revenue that actually this year is up, but most of that's because of COVID funds and the like. And I mean, we appreciate those CARES Act funds, but I pray we don't need those moving forward. They are much appreciated, though. And then there's local taxes. So there's limited areas as far as enhancing revenue. Expenditures, again, the more you cut, the worse things get. And I mean, the district can do things as far as deferring maintenance schedules and putting cutting back on other supply type items and cutting budgets across the board, which we have done. But in the long run, that is not a long-term solution. So that is that. Not to end on bad news, but to end on good news. So I know we had discussion coming into the fall about our fund balances and whether we were going to make it through November with our low fund balances, and the board approved taking out a tax anticipation note with our local bank. And so we executed that agreement with UMB in September, and we now have access to $10 million. To date, as of today, we have borrowed zero of that $10 million. Not that that's been easy, and it keeps me awake at night sometimes, but we've been able to make payroll without missing a beat. We are paying bills, but we're taking our full terms on those bills. So people are getting paid, and they're getting paid according to agreements. We have had a little bit of extra funds come in here and there that were not anticipated to come in, particularly at that time. And we got our first large distribution of local taxes for this year last Thursday, just under $1.1 million. I was hoping I was going to be able to tell you we got the second distribution either yesterday or today, but I checked right before I came over here this evening, and we didn't have the money yet. But we should have, and I'm talking a substantial distribution of probably 15 million or so later this week would be my hope. And that, if that occurs, we will not have to borrow at all. The only possibility that if that doesn't come in, there may be the possibility that we'd have to borrow a small amount next week, as we have another payroll coming due, and that's a large expenditure. So that's the good news. We haven't had to borrow that. And just to help folks understand that the TAN, so the TAN is a tax anticipation note, and because tax revenues are one of our largest sources of revenue. We are able to borrow against the anticipation of that revenue coming in because the taxes come in. It is kind of like a home equity loan on a personal note. So, you know, you've got the house worth X amount of dollars, you need to, you know, borrow 20 of that so that you can do a renovation, or you can, you know, do whatever you need to do, pay for a kid's education, something like that. So it's borrowing against the value that you know you have, and we have not had to touch it yet. So that's a positive aspect. So any questions on the financial report?
The good news on that is that when you do borrow that money, you got to pay that back like almost immediately as your funds come in, correct?
Correct.
So immediately you're putting yourself in the rears for the next year. So by not having to do that, we're saving that problem. And
Yes.
I know that requires a lot of budget management on your part, John, and I appreciate the fact that you worked hard to make that happen, because we've never had to do that, and it looks like we might have a shot at getting through this year without having to do that. I have a question. If you could go back to the other graph where you were estimating the
fund
balances? At what point does our lease purchase disappear up there?
So I think we still have 2 lease purchases on the books. And I just so happen to have the audit report here, and that will give us the exact data. I know it's several years out. I believe it's another 6 or 7 years yet before the lease.
Is that reflected because that's like 37 cents that we're spending on lease purchase right now.
These are just operating fund balances, Fund 1 and 2. This does not include Fund 4,
okay,
which is the capital projects, which is where the leases are paid from.
Okay.
So now, wow.
Now that initially that's not debt service money though, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
That is
So once
the
that
39
comes back in, we can use that to operate on again, correct?
Yes, because we allocate a part of our operating levy to the capital projects fund each year.
Right.
To help with capital projects for renovations and
right.
fixing things, but also to
Right.
pay for these leases.
And that's kind of the variable that we have in our budget.
Yes.
In other words, I've always been astonished that we've been able to keep our balance at the end of the year exactly at $15.5 million, or within a few $100 of that every year. Well, the way we accomplish that is we look at how much money we have, and then we spend that down to that on capital improvements. And I know over the last couple of years, we've spent $13 million on capital improvements. Seems like that we need to really start kind of watching that more carefully, and maybe start taking some of that money. Have we taken $500,000 over the last 6 years and not spent that on capital improvements? And I know, you know, we got plenty of capital improvements to do. I understand that. But it's just like at home. If you can't afford to replace the carpet this year, you wait until the next year to do it, or do it some other time. But we need to start thinking in terms of trying to build that reserve. And if it means we can't spend $7 million, which is an extraordinary amount to spend in 1 year on capital improvements, maybe we only spend 6, or maybe only spend 4, and we can start building those reserves again.
Right. To answer your question on the leases, so the leases will be finally paid off in 2028. So that's the third column from the right there. And I fully appreciate your comments on not spending that down. But the other side to that, too, is if you have deferred maintenance, that's how you wind up with facility issues. We're dealing with some of those issues today. So, deferred maintenance, while it can help a budget for a year or maybe 2 if you want to draw it out, it's not a long-term fix either, because ultimately you got to take care of your facilities so that you got great places for kids to learn and teachers to teach.
And I agree with that, but then you have debt service money.
Yes.
that is being retired along the way that you can use, like we're using now, to make some of the repairs in the districts with Prop P.
This is very bleak. I think that we need to start looking at our expenditures very closely and start looking at ways that we can improve this fund balance. I'm happy that we haven't had to use the TAN. Have you had any information from the state about possible cuts this year? I know that they've said there could be more cuts coming, and next year would be our more difficult time. But have you heard anything yet from the state?
The last meeting that I was involved with the deputy commissioner for DESI that's over finance, Dr. Monses, he was saying, so whenever we had the cut at the end of last year, it was very difficult because it was at the end of the budget year. So everything's spent, and all of a sudden, hey, you're not going to get $3 million. You can't do anything about that. And while it wasn't fun for this year, they told us about the cut for this year on July 1. And they took that whole cut in the month of July. So we've already lost that money for this year. Now, what Dr. Monses shared with the group that I was with on a Zoom for this was, as the economy continues to churn along, and believe it or not, sales tax has remained strong, and that's a large source of revenue for school districts. But as the economy continues to churn and improve little by little here and there, that the likelihood of that $3 million cut being reduced grows. So hopefully, by the end of this fiscal year, that $3 million will be something less. I mean, it'd be great if it was zero. And so towards the end of the year, we get $3 million that we had already cut out of the budget. It's not going to be zero, but I can't tell you what that's going to be. With school funding, there's so much of that also depends on what the legislature does whenever they come in and introduce new bills and the like. So we're hopeful, and Dr. Monses is hopeful that things will only get a little bit better through this year. And I think as vaccine rolls out and people get inoculated and start feeling more comfortable, and things continue to progress, and people get more comfortable doing things, and the economy just continues to churn, then that's going to be good for all of us. But I mean, at this point, we're dealing with that $3 million hole, but it should get better.
We usually find out in May, is that correct, about cuts and how much money we're going to be getting, or is it June?
For the next year?
Mm-hmm.
So the legislative session ends, I don't know, 2 weeks into May, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's generally when we know for sure, and that's when they pass the budget for the next year.
Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions? I guess for you, John, and Dr. Patel, I just wondered, I know there'd been talk in the past, if you had other ideas about how to deal with this besides doing budget cuts and ways to increase revenue. I know a while back, ideas have been floating about, because our enrollment's down at the elementary, closing an elementary. I didn't know if you were still thinking that was a need, and if so, which building? I mean,
that would be
I'm personally not in favor of that, but if that's still a
right,
thought that's in your head,
I think we had a large list of potential areas to reduce budget that we shared with the board last summer. And I think that list is still viable. I think everything on that list is still viable. And one of those things was closing a school. Is that a possibility? I think it is, and if our enrollment continues to decline, I think it would be a necessity. And again, I think it's going to depend on what enrollment looks like whenever we come back 4 days a week, and as we move on down, hopefully whenever we're back 5 days a week, and we get a really good picture. But yes, I think that's a possibility that needs to remain on the table, absolutely. And if I remember correctly, that was like $1 million a year that would save, was the estimate at that point.
I probably wasn't on the board when that first, what happened is that we moved, we had a reduction in enrollment, but when we moved our kids out of the elementary schools and put them in the middle schools, we obviously reduced our elementary population by 800 kids thereabouts. And so I'm certain whenever that decision was made, it was already understood that we would probably be closing a school, and I'm sure the people that were doing the assessing of that already understood that. Was that shared with the community whenever we moved our 6th grades up into the middle schools and then had to build, and it was kind of an interesting thing, we actually had to build additional space in our middle schools to accommodate that, knowing that we'd be closing an elementary school. It just was surprising to me. But what was the analysis? What kind of an analysis did we do?
By moving, again, and I know that we always talk about this, but that was not, moving our kids from elementary to secondary, meaning to 6th grade, is not what's going to cause us to have to close down a building. I think overall, if you look at it, if you look at the numbers in our elementary schools, yes, we could have kept them there and kept the buildings open, but was it efficient? That was the question.
Well, Dr. Patel, if you take 800 kids out of your elementary program, that's about a school and a half that you're taking out. So it had to be a factor. I can't believe that you don't believe that taking 800 kids out of your elementary program was going to ultimately put us in the position to where we were going to have to make a decision about closing the school.
But then
that had to be discussed at that time.
But was it efficient? Is that an efficient move to make? And yes, the answer was yes, because what we ended up doing was condensing a bunch of feeder patterns, saving $600,000 in transportation costs, and aligning kids for college career readiness in the curriculum from 6 through 12. So yes, you have a lot of gains by moving kids to the middle school.
I guess I ask, though, if we're looking at, if that's a future possibility, there must be some thought process as to what elementary school, because if we're thinking about closing an elementary school, then we have to plan for that in terms of not only the students, but then if we're thinking about closing that facility, what use are we going to make of it, or what are we going to do with it? Or, if we're doing capital projects and we know we're not going to use that building anymore, I'm just trying to, all those things have to be brought forth if we're going to consider it, because if you're going to close a building, are you going to try to sell it to somebody else? It's going to be used for a different purpose. But if that's a possibility, then why would we do a lot of renovations on a building that we might have to close? You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to logically think through the process. So I guess what I'm asking, if that's, it would help to know what the thought is.
I think we need the boards, because we've said that before. We've put that out there, and I know the board has been hesitant on having that conversation. So if the board is saying, yes, let's have this conversation, we will be more than happy to look at numbers and start planning that accordingly.
Well,
and share that with you.
I'd like to have the information. It's not something I really want to do, really at
No.
all. It's not. I mean, I've talked before that ultimately, I think, but financially we're not in a position to do this. I think it would be phenomenal. One of the uses for the elementaries would be to have preschool in every building, so that the kids could attend a preschool that then later that they would go to kindergarten and so forth on. But I don't know that, and that's not going to, that might take up 1 or 2 rooms. I don't know that it would be enough. But I just, if we're gonna be responsible and good stewards of the money, and if that's the thought out there, then, you know, it's not something I wanna do, but if we don't know, then we can't solve the problem. And I mean, because I just think,
Dr. Patel, I would assume that Merrimack Heights is not one of the schools that you're considering closing because we're getting ready to spend another $6 million, right, on that?
No, that would not be. You would look at the elementary, obviously, that has low enrollment. Merrimack Heights is one of our top enrollment campuses, buildings.
Now,
It has the
whenever you
most
close the school, you're going to have to redo boundaries, I would assume, and all that
Yes.
business.
Yeah?
I didn't want to go down a whole, but I was remembering that, and I was thinking that that had been related to money. That would be the reason to do it, and so we were looking at, I mean, the fund balances is pretty, I think Crystal used a good word, it's kind of bleak there, really bleak, so, okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Michelle, I thought I saw you looking.
I can say something. This isn't the first time that John has presented this to us, so I guess I'm not very shocked. The board has not mentioned asking the taxpayers for an increase in tax. I know that's a really bad word because nobody likes taxes, but for goodness sakes, our kids are worth it. But we, as a board, need to show our community that we are being good stewards of their money, and we're doing great things for the kids. So I would just say, let's just see where we can cut and then have conversations. And I would like to know how much we get in our taxes per child compared to other districts, like, your Festus, your Northwest, your Windsor, all those other districts. How much do their residents pay into the taxes for their schools?
So there's a couple different ways to look at that, and so I can get those numbers for you, but there's different ways to look. So if you're talking about assessed value per child, per enrolled student, that would be one way to look at it. Another way would be to look at the actual tax revenues per student. And again, I know we've had some discussion about, how do revenues look at other districts and the like. So every school district is different as far as their breakdown in the revenues between the local, state, and federal. So comparing, it's not always comparing apples to apples, is what I'm saying. Whenever you look at one district, Fox, say, against a Festus or even a Windsor, just because your tax base is so different. But I can definitely get those numbers for you.
Like a home in Festus compared to a home in Arnold, same value, I guess, of house.
Gotcha.
That's
based on the tax rate.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
On to the next item on the agenda, 4.2 Capital Improvement Plan.
So the sheet you have attached there, this was part of agenda item 6.1 on March the 3rd of this year, this year's meeting. So this is not something I put together but dug out for you all to start looking at. At that point, we were looking at spending $25 million over the next 5 fiscal years for capital improvements. And these are capital improvements that would come directly out of our budget, out of our fund balance. So this is not anything to do with the bond issue, Prop P, anything like that. So this is directly out of our budget. And you can see how those allocations worked out. There was, for this current year, not quite $4.6 million allocated for those projects. Now those 4 projects highlighted in yellow, which are part of this year's budget, and most of that work occurred over the summer. and is complete. So there was just under $4 million allocated in that on this spreadsheet for those 4 items. All the bids came in at just under $4.5 million, so about $500,000 over what was allocated there. So that came out of the replacement of buses and vehicles left at the top there. So as we look moving forward, this coming year, 2021-22 summer, so the summer of 21, you'll see how the $5 million is allocated to those different areas. As you are aware, we are in the middle of the selection process for a new architect. So for these projects to occur in the summer of 21, I don't know that they would be able to, as far as time frame goes. The projects that occurred this last summer, so those 4 yellow highlighted projects, the bids were brought to the board, I believe it was that same meeting, so on March 3rd. And so that was having the plans laid out, the schematics put together, the bid documents put together, getting those bids advertised for the appropriate periods in the papers, and analyzing those bids. Pardon me.
Understanding is the highlighted ones for 2021 are almost complete.
Correct.
So what we're really talking about is
next.
whether or not we want to move forward on 21, 22, or just wait because of the financial situation. That's another
Right.
$5 million.
Right.
Correct?
And that's what we're talking about. But I'm also just letting you know, so a year, at this point a year ago, they would have already been gathering those bid documents together to put them out for contractors to bid on. So that like I said, the board approved those, I believe it was the March 3rd meeting last spring. That time frame is short. And so being able to get bids let before March would, that's just a quick time frame, especially if we're in the middle of changing architects.
So John, you talk 2021, 22, is that the ones you're talking about, or the highlighted ones?
21, 22.
Okay.
Second column there.
The second column, okay, that's what I thought.
Because the
So,
other ones have already been done, Crystal. The ones that are highlighted, those are almost complete.
oh, that's what, okay. So we're looking at $5,065,000, okay. And you're saying that in order to do this, it would be too late to let these out right now because of our time factor, correct?
If we are going to have the new architecture firm that gets selected do this, I think the time frame is very short.
Okay.
Because they have not seen the scope of work.
All right,
They
so,
haven't set foot in the premises.
So
So
I
in order
guess
to
what-
get that all designed and put together to bid out, I'm just saying that time frame is really short, and I do not see it realistically happening. And if it were to, if they were able to get something put together and, say, put it out at the end of March, the problem with that is, in the construction world, they have certain schedules, and they have to build for, they have to get their staffing right for the projects they have. And so if all of a sudden this project's coming in late and everybody's already got their schedules filled, you're not going to get good bids from construction companies.
okay.
I guess-
So looking at these items here, are there items that are of high importance that we need to get done?
I would say.
He's going to say all of them, Crystal.
Well,
No, I won't,
they are all important.
I know they're all important, but we're
Absolutely,
looking at
absolutely.
cash flow right now.
Yep. And I would also say there's a large number, if you just look down through there, HVAC replacements, or where it's talking about improve heat pump, loop water, neutral air, neutral air, loop water, heat pumps, cooler. all that has to do with replacing aging and obsolete, as it shows here, HVAC units. And so those are very important. And that, you know, if you look, there's 10 projects on there. 6 of those are school buildings listed with HVAC as one of the items. And then there's a 7th one that's Rickman Auditorium. So the HVAC is very important for that. But, you know, I mean, we have buses we need to replace as well. And we're not buying any buses this year. And that adds a strain to the bus fleet as well.
Maybe this seems like a silly question, but I'm old and I can remember this. I don't remember hiring architects, and again, it wasn't my area, but I sat in a lot of board meetings, 15 years. I can't remember hiring architects to do capital projects. It seemed like our maintenance department took care of bidding those out and getting them done, and I don't know, am I wrong? Am I thinking incorrectly? Is my memory? I mean, to me, that increases the price if you have to have an architect do it. And I'm sure these numbers include the cost of an architect, so
depending on
not to put you on the spot, Scott.
No, you're
But
fine. So depending on the project, some of these projects require an engineer stamp, design, and sizing, and that wouldn't be anything any of our past directors ever would have done. There are projects that they did take on that would have been like an asphalt project, something of that nature. Nothing where you're talking mechanical engineering for what size units would go into this space, current requirements for fresh air, things like that. That wasn't anything that was ever done by our directors.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, and I know every year we've done part of it, but it seems like every single building, we're having an HVAC project every year. Is that correct? It's a different part? Because
So we try to put out the biggest fire first. Our biggest problems we're hitting first and going back and finishing up something that wasn't as much of a problem. Kind of the same approach we took with roofs. Several roofs, we would do half of them, 2/3 of them, and didn't finish them because that part wasn't as bad as another building has an area. Every time it rained, water leaked in the building, or there was constant repairs with the rooftop unit. And it's always just a perpetual, you know, for a long time we did defer maintenance. I know John Brazil had put together some numbers of what was deferred and what we had spent between certain years, and it just caught up to us. There's a lot of equipment that wasn't changed in its lifetime, and now we're still using it beyond its lifetime.
okay, so I don't know what the rest of the board is thinking as far as.
You said something, Scott, about engineer. Can we work with an engineer company without having an architect involved? Because I think, don't we work with one already pretty closely?
So there's things beyond just that. There's permitting, there's quite a few things beyond just the physical drawing itself of what the mechanical equipment is.
I remember when we were talking about if we were going to change architects, and I made the comment about I would be okay with changing architects if the capital improvement projects weren't delayed because of this. And it sounds like because of us changing architects, we're having this delay.
No, that has nothing.
I think there was just a concern with the fund balance as far as looking at the capital projects in total and considering whether we wanted to move forward with them or wait and see where we are in projects, maybe delay it a little bit because of the situation with the finances. I mean, next year's projects is $5 million, and so that was why we wanted to have a discussion. It's not connected to the architect. I was just asking the question to make sure for myself that I understood whether these projects actually required an architect. Because, again, my experience in the past was that for a lot of our capital improvement projects, that wasn't always necessary to have an architect.
Well, I
oversee
can't
it,
think of
so-
a time in the history of the school district that we spent $1.2 million on architectural fees over 3 years unless we were building a major building. And so, and unless Vern Sullivan was absolutely a master, he figured out a way to do that. Or Bob Grumo over there, can you think of a time that we spent money like that on architectural fees? That's a lot of money, $400,000 a year. Probably we'd be better off hiring somebody who has a degree in that rather than spending $400,000 a year. I got one other question too. When you look at this, John, I look at the budget allocation for unanticipated projects. And as you look at that number, it grows considerably over the years. Now, my point on that is, wouldn't it make sense to maybe push, when we get to 23, 24, 24, 25, we don't have that many projects. You know, we're spending about half the budget there. Wouldn't it make sense at this stage of the game, especially for next year, to push some of those back to when we're going to have more money to actually spend on those kinds of projects?
I think that could be a strategic move to help the budget this coming year. I will point out that if I remember correctly, I was not employed here at the time, but if I remember correctly, the needs list, the capital needs list in this district was something like $150 million. Even when we were, when the district ran the $70 million proposition 2 years ago. And we just, you know, thanks to the great voters of the Fox School District, you know, we passed a $40 million one this last year. So, you know, that leaves $110 million worth of projects and needs around the district. And while we can't address all of that with budget money, if we've got $5 million, say, a year that we can target for that, I think that would be a good start towards the other $110 million of items.
I can tell you, in a district like ours, we could spend probably $10 million a year easily on capital improvements. It's just that we don't live in a community that has the resources to support that kind of arrangement, unfortunately, and without doing significant tax increases. And that's why the lease purchase piece has always been a kind of an important one to me, because we really tied up a lot of our operating levy when we did that.
So are we just kind of putting this on hold and just have this discussion and move on, or what are people thinking?
I have a question. So are we saying that the money for 21-22 is allocated for those items?
No. No, this is just, this is the plan that was put
That's
out
just the
almost
plan.
a year ago.
The money's not allocated.
Yeah,
Okay.
just saying that, hey, this is, you know, if we're going to spend $5 million a year roughly on capital projects, here's how we would do it over the next 5 years.
So the reason that I asked for this to be put on the agenda, because in the weekend update, Dr. Patel had indicated that we might want to move forward with this, and I thought the board might consider, because of the situation with the finances, whether or not we actually, I mean, it's a plan. We have not allocated the money. Maybe we want to wait and see where we actually are. And I don't know if we need to make a motion or we just can table it for now, but
And we
$5
can,
million
I mean, this will
is a
be
lot to spend.
part
I
of the
know
budget discussion as well.
that could
But
be
if we don't do anything tonight, then we will not be able to get these capital improvements done this summer, right?
We're not going to be able to anyway, because it's going to take a while, apparently, to get the
My-
architect.
But what about if we go back to BRS? Why can't we have that architect company who's already done all this pre-stuff? Why can't they? No, they've already done this, what, scope and
No,
sequence?
they've done the ones for 2021. They have not done anything for
I thought
21,
they worked
22.
on Fox Elementary School.
There are projects every year at all of those. You can see on Fox Elementary School, there was a project for this year of $1.45 million.
John, did they start on Seckman High and Fox Elementary?
So part of their process, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but so they built the plan to do Fox Elementary over a period of, what, 3 years? 2 years, 3 years?
2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years. And so while they've got, they've got the idea and they've got it laid out, they probably don't have the final documents of that yet. And same way with Seckman High School and replacing roofing and HVAC there to address those issues. It's a multi-year deal. I mean, it's like, if you look in here, it's like at least 4 years, maybe 5 in there, for Seckman High School. So, while they had a plan and maybe some preliminary design and drawing, but they've been in those buildings as well, so they know what they're dealing with, as opposed to, and I'm not pushing one way or the other. I'm answering your question. So, as opposed to an architect that hasn't set foot in the building recently, anyway, they've got a lot of investigative work to do. Now, I would also say the 2-month delay that has occurred probably jeopardizes doing any summer projects this summer, which would be my thought.
So can any of these projects be done during the school year?
Okay, wait a minute, we get, all we were talking about was
Well, I'm just
2020
talking about whether we're talking about, do we spend money, don't we spend money?
Yeah.
And
That's what I'm
so,
trying to keep it to.
if we're worried about timing, and we need to wait and see what money we have, and are there gonna be any more
Wait another
cuts,
year.
maybe we just need to wait and see. And my question is, can any of these projects be done during the school year? So if the timing is off, and you can't get companies to come in at good bids for the summer, are any of these projects feasible during the school year?
I would say with the HVAC, that's probably a no.
Some of the smaller projects, there's Ridgewood Middle School on there, Seckman Middle School, which would probably be pretty close to direct replacement from what's there. Rickman Auditorium.
So some of those things, if we have the money, could actually be done in a timely fashion, because we would have a little more time waiting to find out what money is going to come in. And
How many of the 21, 22 projects are emergencies?
Right.
Ones that just absolutely have to be done because the system is just completely failing and there's nothing we can do, there's no repairs that you can make on it. How many of those, I've kind of worked this kind of stuff before, and sometimes we fix things rather than replace them. How many, we're looking at $5 million, and we may not have, what if we don't have that $5 million to spend? I guess that's my point.
The big project, Fox Elementary, all those systems through that part of the building are all residential split systems. They're roughly, I would say, 25 to 30 years old. The only alternative would be to go in and individually replace them as they're failing, which we have been doing. We have surplus units from the work we did this past summer that we saved, I think 3 of them. But obviously there's a lot more than 3 rooms there as we would go through that. Seckman High School, we have an ongoing issue because they're at the end of their life on the heat pumps. And I know that was kind of a large issue last year when this all kind of got started, because we know Seckman High School is a multi-step problem. Building was built in 1996. Everything's 25 years old. It's the end of its life. We have 5 boilers in there that we really don't have on the slate to be changed just yet, because we still have a lot of heat pumps through the building that need to be changed. 2 years ago, we did the cooling towers outside, because towers that were there had finally just gotten into such disrepair, they weren't working. As we've done this, we have done things to save the equipment. We've added some filtration to the systems and reworked some piping that had been issues where they used a mechanical fitting to assemble the pipe. This past summer when we did this, we put in copper pipe and it is all brazed, which should never leak once you have that brazed joint, because it's low pressure. But mechanical fittings do fail because it's just a rubber gasket holding it together. Rickman Auditorium. The unit closest to Fox High School is the oldest unit up there. The unit on the other side, which is closer to Jeffco, it was changed out probably, 12 years ago or so. That one's not in too bad a shape. We really didn't plan on replacing it, but replacing the unit on the west side and the two small units on the lobby. That one is a problem when we have events. That unit. Ridgewood Middle School would be the last of the units that are old, because we did that upgrade at Ridgewood a couple of years ago where we did the rest of the classroom areas, cafe. So right now we have left the band, choir, and gym. Are they necessities? I guess it would depend on.
I guess that's the question. In other words, if you had to make a decision and you had to push some of those projects off, which ones would you push off, knowing that maybe you might have to do a repair job on or something like that?
I wouldn't push off Seckman High School because there's so much there that we'd have to bite up and chew later. We've done one phase of it, which was wing 1 and 2. By doing that work at Seckman High School and Fox Elementary, and it's mainly Seckman High School where the difference will happen, we will actually reduce the amount of rooms in our district that do not get fresh air. So currently at Seckman High School and where this was planned, those classrooms don't have a functioning window because they're located in an area where there isn't one, and the heat pump system currently does not bring in fresh air. Part of this project was to add a DOAS unit, as we did on the first and second wing, to provide these areas with fresh air to improve the air quality, which in the end would reduce that number in district-wide by 20% of what we have left that doesn't have it.
Scott, it says on Fox Elementary, it's roof replacement and the HVAC. Does that go hand in hand when you're replacing?
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of goes hand in hand. That roof is in pretty bad shape. It's a coated EPDM roof that's failing. Below that is an old build-up roof, which is familiar to gravel roof underneath with tar. They just layered over it. Another issue that we found on the first half of the building was the type of insulation they used years ago is actually a highly flammable insulation. So we did a total tear-off on the first part of the building, which is the first 2 pods, got rid of it, and put down new insulation that is fire resistant. So as we're doing these things, the other goal was to eliminate gas appliances in the classrooms at Fox Elementary. Right now, every classroom has a gas furnace. Afterwards, nobody will have a gas appliance in the building. The only gas appliance will be in the kitchen.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to make a motion. I think that what I've heard is that Fox Elementary and Seckman High School need the attention the most, and that both of those projects would come to $2.65 million. So I would like to make a motion that we allocate $2.65 million to capital improvements for Fox Elementary and Seckman High School. Oh, how do you do that then?
Well, that's why we're just discussing.
Oh, shit. Oh, me too.
Oh, we heard that. Oh, no.
Whoops. I'm learning. It's my first year. Let me get it. So then what are we doing then?
Here's what I think would be a better approach.
Oh, never mind then.
Because
I would ask them to try to cut that budget by maybe 25%. And they need to make the decisions on what things they need to do. I mean, anybody in the business world, when things get tight,
well, I like Michelle's idea. That's almost half she cut it, so I like that.
But they need to make the decisions they need to set the priorities. But the bottom line is we need to be spending less money next year and as little as we possibly can get by until we know we can always add things back in. But once you obligate that, you can't take it back out. And so I would approach it a little differently.
Part of the cost happens due to, like when you do the heating and cooling work at Seckman High, the ceilings have to come out to remove the heat pumps. Since we removed the ceilings, we go back with new ceiling tile, new lights, because they don't have LED lighting. We do dimmer switches, motion sensors. Same thing is happening at Fox Elementary, because we have to tear the ceilings out for the mechanical equipment. We go back with new ceilings, new lighting. To leave it, it would probably be almost a neutral cost, because you'd have to remove it and then put it back in, and you didn't put new back in. There would be some difference, but I don't know it'd be much savings.
Is that
Because of
included,
labor.
is that included in this price?
Yes. That was in total project cost. That included at Fox Elementary, new cabinets along the exterior wall, because right now they have cabinets there that is the ductwork actually, and once we remove them, the wall is unfinished. So to save us some cost in creating a finished wall, we did shelving instead.
Okay,
And
so,
the teachers get back the shelving they had before.
so basically what we're doing right now is just deciding that we're gonna put this on hold, and that once we know where we are financially, then we'll come back and look at prioritizing those projects. And so it might be delayed on the startup of it.
Is that what you, was that the whole intent, John?
We wanted,
For this put on the agenda, because I didn't want it automatically to be assumed that we would just move forward with this without the board having discussion
So
of it.
have we
because
already paid BRS to
on the
do
2021.
the drawing? I know, but have we already paid them to do the workup for Fox Elementary and Seckman High School? Have they already done that preliminary work?
For the coming summer?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, that's what I wanted to.
I think the basic thing is right now, if I'm listening to the majority of the board here, is everybody's feeling like we need to kind of hold off on these projects for next year and wait till see where we are before we make a decision about how to move forward. And I don't know if anybody else is, that's what I was.
Since Hodge is one of our, Hodge is our newest building, I thought maybe we would look at that to see if there's any of those repairs that could wait. Are they really drastic? I'm looking at the ones that, the older buildings, of course, we know are in worse shape. But Hodge, is there something we could cut back there, Scott?
Projected out one more year.
Yeah, Hodge has 200,000 for 21-22 and 500 for 22-23.
I believe what we were looking to do there was to actually replace the cooling tower. So it really wasn't a major renovation in the building, but it's cooling tower, loop pump, associated things. It is getting to, due to poor water treatment in the system for a while, it aged the piece of equipment.
Okay.
So basically, we're asking them to prioritize this, and we'll bring it back at another time for full discussion about it.
Well, we've kind of discussed it to death here, yes.
Is that basically what we're doing? Okay, I just want to
Because I just wanted to clarify, because in the weekend update, Dr. Patel was indicating
Right.
that we needed to move forward with it right away, and I wasn't comfortable without having a discussion on it, because it's a fairly significant amount of money, and when you look at our financial status, it might be something that needs to wait.
so
I
so
wanted
in
us to have that
I want to make
discussion.
sure I'm clear, on the weekend update, I definitely said that I would recommend that we move forward for this summer on 2 projects, Seckman High School and Fox Elementary. And the reason for that is because we already started that last summer, and we didn't want to pause on it, because last year, Seckman High School was an issue. And the reason we even started all of it is because we were getting a lot of complaints from our staff because of the heating and cooling that was occurring. So I didn't want to stop this summer and take a pause on it. So I said, out of all of this, If there's two things we need to get done and not pause on it, would be those two. But what John is saying now is because we are changing firms, it is going to cause a delay in that, and we may not be able to get it done anyway this summer. But we could try. So my recommendation was definitely to move forward with those two.
I misunderstood that part. I thought you were recommending that we look at doing all those projects and approve them now, and that's why I asked for it to be put on the agenda.
So John, when you're meeting with the architect, the new one that we're looking at, can you include these two areas for them to look at too? So that we may be able to move forward faster on them?
If that's what the board wants me to do, that's what I can do.
I mean, do you need a motion on that then?
I don't think I need a motion. I think I just
All
need.
right, I know, I don't think, I think we're just asking you to look into it for us.
Absolutely.
Budget, right.
Right.
If it's a budget of $5 million, and we can't afford $5 million, then you're going to have to make the decisions to prioritize what you're doing, and it's just that simple.
Right.
Right.
And if it's, it may be $3 million that we can spend, you know, this is not rocket science.
But you can have them bid that also.
Okay.
So that they know that the work's right.
.3 Curriculum Advisory Update. Mr. Fitzpatrick.
So this item is our customary update. Every time we have a curriculum advisory meeting, I bring an update to the school board. There are 3 attached items there. There's a report to the school board, which is a slideshow. There's also the complete slide deck that we used at the curriculum advisory meeting. And then there's the entirety of the feedback from the curriculum advisory group. All of this was provided in the weekend update last week and is here as a information item as part of the public record. But I'm not making a presentation this evening. But I'm happy to take questions if you have any.
Anybody have any questions?
Declan, the math curriculum, you have it on display. Is it going to be on display tomorrow too?
So the products from the math vendors, there are 7 of them on display in Fox High School, and they will be on display until January 19th.
Till January 19th.
If you come during school hours, there should be someone who can buzz you in right in through the security door in the library. And if you contact me, I will arrange to make sure that I can be there to let you in. But they're there for all teachers, elementary teachers, to come and visit from now until January 19th.
All right. And you said school hours now?
You can arrange to come anytime. We can certainly make sure. If you're there during school hours, you don't have to make a pre-arrangement to come by because someone will answer the security buzzer.
All right.
Any other questions? All right. Next item is the audit presentation. Mr. Stewart.
So you have copies, both digital and hard copy, of the audit report from June 30th, 2020, as well as the management letter from our auditing firm, Daniel Jones and Associates. Our auditor that was over the project was supposed to be here this evening. You have a letter there from them. Unfortunately, with the pandemic that's going on, CPA firms are not unaffected by that. So I want to read this letter from them. On behalf of Daniel Jones and Associates, we would like to thank the Board of Education for giving us the opportunity to audit the Fox C-6 School District for the year ended June 30th, 2020. With all the challenges brought on by 2020, we are now ready to submit the audit report for board approval. We apologize for not being able to have a representative at the meeting. A special thank you needs to go to Dawn Trokey, Director of Finance and Business Services, for all of her hard work during the audit, providing us with everything we need to do our job. We as auditors issue opinions as to whether or not the district has presented its financial statements fairly in all material aspects, has any material misstatements in the financial data, internal controls, and federal programs. We have issued unmodified opinions in the audit report, which are the highest opinion the district can receive. Based on these opinions, the district should feel confident in the financial data provided in the audit report. There were also no audit findings to report. If there are any questions about the audit report, please do not hesitate to ask. And I will point out to you there are 3 opinions in the audit report. On page 2 is the opinion on the fair presentation of the financial data. On page 53 is the opinion concerning requirement or compliance with state requirements. And on page 63 is the opinion on the federal, each major federal program, compliance with those federal guidelines. So those are, as mentioned in their letter, those are all unmodified opinions, which are the highest opinion that they can issue. The audit went well. It was done all virtually. So I've never been involved with an audit where you didn't actually sit down with the auditor, but they had a Dropbox for us, as well as they're just up the street, to share documents back and forth to provide all that audit documentation that they need to complete their work. So everything went well, and Dawn deserves a ton of recognition for that, but not just her, but all the staff in the finance department, because everybody has to pull together to provide the documentation. So I just want to give a big thank you to all those folks. Any questions on the audit?
Okay, if there are no questions, I need a motion to.
Motion to accept the report from the auditors.
I'll second that motion.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passed. Next
John,
item.
please let your staff know, because I know this is an immense amount of work, that we appreciate it.
Great, thank you, I will.
Next item, 5.2, commercial package insurance renewal.
So you have in front of you the commercial package proposal from CPSK. Our package, this is for property insurance and liability insurance for 2021. It runs out December 31st of this year, so bids were solicited on behalf of the district by CPSK, as they are annually. A copy of the coverage summary, including the premium summary, is included. The very last page of that document is the premium summary. So this year coverages are split among 4 insurance companies. In the 2021 premiums of $605,839 compared to the 2020 premiums of $587,632, and that's an increase of 3.1%. Just as a frame of reference, increases for the previous 3 years were in 2020 premiums increased a little over 22%. The prior year, 2019, they increased 7.37%, and in 2018, they increased a little over 6.5%. So the current commercial package, as I said, expires December 31st, 2020, and we ask you to approve the lowest cost provider combination of Wright Specialty Insurance, Hartford Steam Boiler, Gladfelter Public Practice, and RSUI Indemnity.
Okay, can I get a motion, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Motion passed. Next item is approval of memorandum of understanding with Truman State University. Declan.
Yes, in order to place student teachers in our classrooms, we must have a memorandum of understanding enacted between the district and the university. We're asking the school board to approve this memorandum of understanding with Truman State.
So move.
All in favor? Next item, memorandum MOU with University of Missouri St. Louis.
It's the same as the previous item, except this is a memorandum of understanding with University of Missouri St. Louis to place student counselors, not student teachers.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Next item is 5.5, girls wrestling coach position and pay rate. Dr. Brock.
We are requesting the board's approval to add a girls wrestling head coach position at each high school at a pay rate of $5,989 per position, which is the same amount that the boys head wrestling coaches are paid. There is a change in the enrollment in these programs since the agenda was published. So the agenda says that Seckman High has 24 students and that Fox High has 15. After tryouts and everything, Seckman High now has 23 girls between both the varsity and the JV, and Fox High has 5.
Dr. Brock, is this for the remainder of this year, this amount?
It's for this current year, yes.
This current year, okay. So some of that must be prorated because they've already been playing, or they're just starting their season? I'm confused, just for me to understand.
They're
just starting?
Yeah. I mean, they have already started having meet, so I guess it's something that could be prorated.
Okay. All right, can I get a motion, please?
Well, is this, oh, go ahead.
Oh, so, I'm sorry, questions.
I was
didn't
just
think-
gonna ask, is this just one coach for both schools?
It's one head coach at each school, so it's 2 positions. And then they have assistant coaches. Oh, they already have assistant coaches.
So they have 5 at Fox? 5 girls? right
5
now.
girls at Fox.
And they still need an assistant for 5
Do we,
girls?
The assistant coaches are distributed as needed, so if they're not needed for the girls, they would be used for the boys. So they already have a set number of assistant coaches.
So we have a men's and women's volleyball team?
Yes.
Do they both have head coaches?
Yes.
They do.
Do we have a men's and women's basketball team?
Yes.
Do they both have coaches?
Yes.
Okay. I move that we approve the,
All in favor? Thank you. Next item is payment of bills.
So you have before you the Group A Register of Bills, and I would just ask for approval as submitted.
so move.
All in favor? Motion passed.
Thank you.
Next item is donations to the school district.
I ask the board for a motion to accept the following donations: $4,500 to Seckman High School Library from Arnold and Fenton Area Walmart. Fox High School Baseball Team, $10,000 from Andrew Polston Insurance Agency. And Antonia Middle School, $500 from Walmart.
Motion to accept those donations?
Second was,
Second,
Michelle.
Chamberlain.
Thank you. Judy. Yeah, we've been forgetting to say our names, and with the mask, sometimes it's hard to hear. Okay, a motion's been made and second. All in favor, please?
Yes.
On here, who's got 27 years with the district. Luann Domek is going to be retiring, and so she's been phenomenal in that position. She'll be sorely missed, but kudos to her. Retirement's great. So anyway, Dr. Brock.
We are requesting the board's approval for all attached hires, stipends, modifications, and separations, and Ms. Yount will want to abstain.
All right, can I get a
Motion, Judy, motion Smith?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, Carol. Next item is, let's see. Okay, we're already on 8.1, correct? Okay. Those consent groupings are nice. Second reading and adoption of policy GCN, evaluation of professional staff. Dr. Brock.
We are requesting the board's approval for the second reading and adoption of GCN. The revision was initially presented for a first reading at our November 17th meeting.
Can I get a motion, please?
Second, Smith.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Whew, we're ready to adjourn. Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Can I get a second? Thank you.